Chapter 39-36. Mo Lien smiled and turned to look at the calm and collected Grand Tutor. The Crown Princess needs to recuperate for a period of time. After all, we have to make the soul-returning pill for His Majesty in a few days. This matter is urgent. As for the Sea of Forgetfulness, there will be plenty of opportunities to go there in the future. The Crown Princess must not have gone to the Sea of Forgetfulness under Imperial Father's orders. It seems that the Grand Tutor himself wants to ask the Crown Princess for help. The Grand Tutor lowered his eyes and said softly, "If that's the case, all right then." This official came abruptly. "Please forgive me, Your Highness. The Grand Tutor is also worried about the country. I naturally will not blame you, nor will I say anything in front of Imperial Father." Prince Mo smiled meaningfully at him, then politely asked someone to lead the Grand Tutor out of the Eastern Palace. Turning to look at an empty corridor pillar, Prince Mo smiled helplessly. "Bad thing, still not coming out." Like a butterfly flying through flowers, the little girl suddenly darted out from the side of the pillar in the corridor and ran quickly to the Crown Prince's side. With a face full of curiosity, she asked, "That old fox came to invite me to the Sea of Forgetfulness. Could it be that he did not give him a good enough beating at the banquet last time, and now he dared to jump out and cause trouble again?" Mo Lien nodded. "Indeed. Heh, he really knows how to flatter himself." Arbor pursed his lips in mockery. Why would this old swindler think that she, the Crown Princess, would accompany him to the Sea of Forgetfulness? If she wanted to go, she could just drag Lotus along with him. Dream on. Mo Lien raised his hand to comb her hair and smiled faintly. "Ignore him. I've already sent him away. Whether Jojo goes to the Great Forest of the North, the Phoenix Forest, the Red River Gorge, or the Sea of Forgetfulness, I will accompany you." Lord Chow Chow rubbed against his body and raised her small head. Her watery eyes curved into two shallow arcs. "I'll keep my word." "Of course." Mo Lien smiled and lifted her up. She leaned over and whispered, "When have I ever lied to my Chow?" Chow Chow nodded her head in satisfaction and reached out her hand to wrap around his neck. Her furry little head rubbed against his neck back and forth as she happily said, "Chow Chow's Lotus." Mo Lien smiled and lowered her head to look at him. She carried him all the way to the side hall. "Did you eat just now?" "I didn't eat much." "Why are you not eating?" "I'm not in the mood." "He must be feeling uneasy because he can't see me." Shameless. "Then I'll eat with you." It was a gentle afternoon with a gentle breeze. It was the beginning of July and the sun was shining brightly. It was truly a sunny day. In the evening, it started to drizzle outside. The eldest young master, who was dressed in a black robe, gently pushed open the door and saw his younger brother sitting by the window. The sun was already setting in the west. The fifth young master supported his chin with one hand as he leaned against the window frame. The book in his hand was slightly drooping, and his gaze was fixed on the fine raindrops in the lotus pond. He clearly didn't read a single word. Qin Xian lowered his eyes and glanced at the book in his hand. Drunken Bliss. It seemed to be a novel that was recently released on the market. He didn't expect that his fifth brother, who was always as calm as still water, would actually read such a strange book instead of reading zither books or teacher's treatise. Cough. Eldest young Sir Qin deliberately coughed, which allowed the 5 young masters, who had been in a daze, to return to their senses. Chapter 39-37. He hastily put down the book and stood up to welcome him. "Elder brother." Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at him and pointed at the stool at the side. "Sit." "Fifth brother, I've already reported seventh brother's actions to father. He will receive the punishment he deserves." Fifth young Sir Qin nodded indifferently, as if he wasn't the slightest bit interested in whether 7th Qin received punishment or what kind of punishment he received. Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at his younger brother's expression and said with a sigh, "Old 7th truly went overboard this time. Don't worry, eldest brother will definitely give you justice." 5th young Sir Qin shook his head indifferently. "It's all thanks to the stoic face that you were able to recover so quickly this time." At the mention of the little stoic, the eldest young sir couldn't help but sigh in frustration, and a peculiar emotion entered his eyes. The 5th young sir's eyes brightened slightly, and his gaze subconsciously shifted to the thin blanket on the bed. Speaking of which, the stoic face's pill arts are unparalleled in the world. Eldest young Sir Qin sighed with emotion. 5th young Sir Qin lowered his eyes slightly and silently listened to eldest young Sir Qin. After a long time, he finally lifted his head slightly and fixed his gaze on his eldest brother. "Eldest brother, how can I become stronger?" Qin Xian was startled, and his gaze landed on his 5th brother. He looked him up and down. "Why do you ask?" No, I was just asking out of turn." 5th young Sir Qin was like a child who had done something wrong, and he hastily lowered his head. Eldest young Sir Qin smiled helplessly and lightly patted his younger brother's hand. "Shio, don't mind these things too much. There are also many ordinary people in the divine province. Moreover, you aren't ordinary. With your intelligence and knowledge, you can also stand at the pinnacle of this world." However, he didn't want to always be protected by others. He also wanted to become strong enough to protect others. The eldest young sir stood up and walked to the window, slowly closing it. "It's windy outside, so it should be a bit chilly tonight. Will it be cold with a thin blanket like yours?" The 5th young sir stroked that furry blanket and shook his head indifferently, murmuring softly, "It's very warm." Qin Xian turned around and looked at him with a slightly surprised gaze. Zhangzhou Imperial Resting Palace. It was already late at night. The great emperor closed the booklet in his hand and asked coldly, "Is he still here?" The head eunuch who accompanied them knelt on the ground, trembling. He nodded and said, "The 4th prince has been in the Lonely Mountain Imperial Mausoleum for a day and a night. The rain doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. Let him be." Emperor Tsang angrily threw a scroll to the ground. "It's hard to achieve great things when you're in the throes of love. When the child was 8 years old, he showed great talent." The Tsang emperor's face was filled with anger as he recalled. He had originally thought that if he was given proper training in the outside world, he would definitely become a dragon. Who would have thought that he would become worse and worse? The head eunuch could only lower his head and advise in a low voice, "Your Highness is still young, and you've just experienced Her Highness's funeral. It's normal for you to take things too hard." The Tsang emperor snorted coldly. "How can you handle major matters if you're indecisive?" Cough, cough, cough. "Your Majesty." The head eunuch hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Please take care of your body." Emperor Tsang waved his hand at him. His cold face was covered with faint anger. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." A eunuch outside hastily reported, "Marquis Anqing has slipped through the night and requested an audience with Your Majesty." Chapter 39-38. The Zhangzhou Emperor pinched the space between his eyebrows with a grumpy expression. He was still worried about his son's matter. Now that Xingho came, he didn't know what he was up to. Did he think he had so much time to deal with their trivial matters? He wanted to ask the eunuch to send him away, but Xingho came in on his knees crying. When he saw the Zhangzhou Emperor, he burst into tears. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Please help me, Your Majesty. My Xiangchang is gone." Sob, 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 sob. The Zhangzhou Emperor's glaring eyes suddenly narrowed. He pinched his eyebrows and pressed his aching head. Didn't Xiangchang go to Phoenix Forest with the Imperial Academy? What happened? Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Someone set up an ambush on the way back from Xiangchang and chased her for 1,000 miles. And Xingho cried. Your Majesty, you didn't see Xiangchang's appearance when she came back. There was almost no good flesh on her body. Woo woo woo, Your Majesty, please uphold justice for us father and daughter. The murderer must be severely punished. The Zhengzhou Emperor asked patiently, then do you know who the murderer is? I know. And Xingho glared and said angrily, the secret guards who chased her along the way are all from the Divine Prefecture. Although I didn't find any flaws in them, it must be the Crown Princess of the Divine Prefecture who has a grudge against Xiangchang and such a powerful force. And Xingho was sobbing, with snot and tears running down his face. I have confirmed this. That's what Xiangchang said before she died. Your Majesty, please help me, Your Majesty. The Zhengzhou Emperor's head was about to explode, but now he was even more annoyed by his crying. He scolded angrily, then what do you want me to do? Punish the Crown Princess of the Divine Prefecture. The Zhengzhou Emperor couldn't help but laugh. The Crown Princess of the Divine Prefecture is in the imperial capital of the Divine Prefecture. My hands can't reach that far. Your Majesty. If Your Majesty doesn't want to help me, I have no one to complain to, sob. And Xingho cried so hard that he was almost rolling on the ground. Grand Eunuch Lai Fu hurriedly ran forward a few steps and advised in a low voice, Marquis, please don't continue to be unreasonable. His Majesty had a hard time dealing with court affairs for a day. Our fourth prince is still making a ruckus in the Lonely Mountain Imperial Mausoleum. Can you take a rest first? Xingho burst into tears and said, Your Majesty, how is this old subject being unreasonable? If Your Majesty refuses to uphold justice for us, then who else in this world can uphold justice for us? Woo woo woo, the veins on the Tsang Prefecture Emperor's forehead bulged. Your Majesty, the Eastern Mountain King requests an audience. Head Eunuch Lai Fu and the few junior eunuchs behind him looked at each other in dismay. What's going on today? Did he purposely choose the moment when the great emperor was in a bad mood to get scolded? East Mountain Wang De strode in and turned a blind eye to Xingho, who was crying and making a scene on the ground. East Mountain King Wu Heng's style was simple. He directly cupped his fist and bowed to the emperor, then said, I've received news that a large number of corpse puppets broke out in Little Li Town in the southern Eagle City this evening. The entire Little Li Town, from the top to the bottom, had lost their lives in this calamity. The great emperor's pupils shrank, and he suddenly turned to look at East Mountain King Wu Heng with a sharp gaze. What do you think? We need Your Majesty's warrant to mobilize the city defense forces in the nearby Eagle City to eliminate those corpse puppets. Chapter 39. Wu Heng, heed my orders. Zhengzhou's emperor promptly ordered and tossed him a warrant. The East Mountain Duke prostrated and left after receiving the order. Before he left, he didn't even glance at Xingho, who was still lying on the ground and wiping his tears. His Majesty wearily sat down on the dragon throne. And Xingho, return first. We'll talk about this later. And Xingho opened his mouth and wanted to argue, but he was lifted up and dragged out by several junior eunuchs. And Xingho was naturally indignant and kept shouting, Your Majesty, along the way, but he was mercilessly thrown out by the junior eunuchs. 2 days later, Duan Yu woke up in a bamboo house with simple furnishings. He pressed his heavy head and slowly climbed up from the bamboo bed with a twitch of his brows. Yuanjun walked in with a plate of hot porridge. When he saw that Duan Yu had woken up, he immediately beamed and said, Your Highness, you're awake. Duan Yu sat there silently and turned a deaf ear to Yuanjun's words. Xiao Kezi quickly walked up and took the bowl of porridge. He gently placed it on the side table and cautiously asked, "Your Highness, you haven't eaten all the rice grains after 3 days and nights. How about eating a bite first?" "What's wrong with me?" Duan Yu frowned as soon as he spoke. He felt like his voice was crushed by a heavy object and was extremely hoarse. Yuan Jin quietly said, "Your Highness is in deep grief and was drenched in the rain for 3 days. Last night you fainted." Xiao Kezi's voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. How about, Your Highness, eat a bit first." Duan Yu's expression was calm and indifferent, as if a thin mask was hanging on his face. He suppressed all his emotions deep down in his heart. "Give it to me," he said dryly. Xiao Kezi was instantly overjoyed and quickly picked up the warm bowl of porridge, bowing as he handed it over. Duan Yu expressionlessly downed the warm porridge in one mouthful without using a spoon. "Greetings to your Majesty." A junior eunuch's anxious and bewildered voice came from outside. Sangzhou's emperor, Rong Yuan, walked in with a sullen face and stared at his son. He then sighed deeply and ordered, "All of you, leave." After everyone left, only the father and son were left in the small bamboo house. "I have always had high hopes for you," Rong Yuan said coldly. "However, you have really disappointed me this time. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't waste my limited time on mourning and crying." "So you're not me." The great emperor was inexplicably choked by his son. He wanted to get angry, but he still snorted coldly. "Do you know what your biggest weakness is?" "Soft-hearted." Rong Yuan spat out these 2 words heartlessly. "If you were strong enough from the start, your mother wouldn't have encountered such a thing." Duan Yu abruptly raised his head and stared sharply at the man before him. He sneered, "Isn't it because you're incompetent?" "What did you say?" "My mother was originally living well on Seacombe Planet. If you hadn't come to provoke her for the rest of her life, she could have continued to live happily like this for the rest of her life." "Because you're my son," Rong Yuan said plainly. "You're the most outstanding one among all my sons. No one can deny that." "So?" Duan Yu couldn't resist chuckling. "My mother is only a vessel to give birth to your children." "Yes." Rong Yuan nodded cruelly. The evening continued, around 8 p.m. Chapter 39-40. Duan Yu's eyes twisted slightly. The morning light's warmth seeped in through the window and landed on him, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of warmth. "If you don't love her, why did you take her in?" "Because of you." Rong Yuan coldly said, "As a monarch, the most important thing is to have an heir. Having a good son is just as important as having a vast territory." "So," he sneered, "you cast a wide net and focused on catching fish." Rong Yuan nonchalantly nodded. "Naturally, you will also be like this in the future." "I won't." Rong Yuan was taken aback, seeming to find his decisiveness a bit strange. "Why?" "Since you don't love her, why delay other people?" Rong Yuan was a bit angry and turned to glare at his son. He coldly said, "Then work harder and marry the one you love." Duan Yu didn't speak for a long time. Until the Zhangzhou emperor felt a bit annoyed. He pushed the crease between his brows and coldly asked, "What else do you want to ask?" Duan Yu coldly questioned, his eyes filled with viciousness. "Just because she's an insignificant woman, that you can order her around. That's why you don't care about her life or death at all." Although it's a bit cruel to say this, it's really very difficult for a normal person to survive in this man-eating world without their own self-defense skills, Rong Yuan dryly said as if he was talking about something insignificant. Duan Yu scoffed, and his body abruptly fell back, sitting heavily on that bamboo couch. He coldly looked at him and enunciated each word clearly. You will die. Will Rong Yuan raised his brows, seeming to be interested. He nodded at his son and said, "As long as you have the ability, Father will be happy to see it happen." "You're really magnanimous." Duan Yu scoffed. As he watched Rong Yuan's figure walk out, he suddenly asked, "Have you never loved anyone in your life?" Rong Yuan's footsteps paused before he replied, "I have. But if you're not strong enough, it's useless to have loved." Rong Yuan looked into the distance indifferently as if he was looking at someone. He said coldly, "It won't belong to you. I'll give you a month at most." He walked out of the bamboo building and left these last words. Duan Yu was silent for a long time. After a long while, Lil Ku-zi finally walked in, trembling with fear. "Have you found him?" Xiao Ku-zi hurriedly nodded. "Dr. Tu is already waiting outside. It's just that, Your Highness, the palace has already investigated the imperial consort's matter. They said yes, there were no signs of poisoning. She must have been scared by the white bear a few days ago." "Do you believe this kind of nonsense?" Duan Yu asked coldly. Little Ku-zi lowered his head and did not dare to say another word. Duan Yu stood up and walked outside without a word. Outside the bamboo house, a woman was dressed in green. Her makeup was clean and simple. He was in his early 20s and had fair skin. When this woman saw Duan Yu coming out, she stepped forward and curtsied without looking sideways. "You've examined her?" The woman nodded and then pursed her lips. "This subordinate's skills are lacking. Although this subordinate saw some signs, I can't be certain. The imperial consort's body doesn't seem to be poisoned, but the imperial consort's body is healthy. She shouldn't have died from a scare." Chapter 39-41. Duan Yu stared at her. "There doesn't seem to be any poison in your body." The woman nodded. "This subordinate suspects that the poison used by that person is colorless and odorless. It's even possible that it works by entering the blood. Have you done what I told you to do?" Physician 2 nodded and handed an item wrapped in a square handkerchief to Duan Yu. Duan Yu frowned and nodded after glancing at it. A figure soundlessly appeared behind Duan Yu. "Send it to the heavenly pill hole." "Yes." The black figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. Duan Yu turned around, and his gaze landed in the distance. It was chilly and cold without a trace of warmth. Xiao Kezi stood there solemnly with his hands by his side, not daring to speak for a long time. He only vaguely felt as if a thin layer of mist had enveloped His Highness the Fourth Prince. It was so cold that it seeped into his bones. He gazed at the mountains in the distance that were all beneath his feet. After a very, very long time, Duan Yu finally took a step forward. It was merely a small step, but it seemed to have exhausted all the strength in his body his mother had left, and he would no longer have a mother for the rest of his life. In the past, he didn't think much of it when she kept nagging by his ear. But humans were strange like this. Once something was lost, it would be impossible to get it back. Sometimes, it would be too late for regrets. He looked up. These few days, he only wanted to immerse himself in his own world. He didn't want to hear, see, or think about anything. He was currently standing at the edge of a cliff, gazing at the drifting clouds in the sky. It was as if he could see his mother's gentle and smiling face. "Son, say, when will you be willing to fulfill Mom's wish and marry a wife for Mom to see?" "Son, Mom hasn't been eating or sleeping well these few days. Every time I close my eyes, I dream of your grandmother coming to find Mom. Your grandmother told Mom, 'How can a grown man like you not get married?' Your grandmother, chased after your mother with a walking stick. How tragic. Son, you don't like this or that. There isn't a single female that can catch your eye. Do you have a girl you fancy? If you fancy someone, you must bring her here for Mom to see. Don't worry, Mom definitely won't drag you down. I also guarantee to assist you. Think about it, my son. Mother, you've already met her, and you like her very much. You can't bear to let go of her, and you're always fighting with your son to hold her. If you see her again, you will definitely like her even more. A gentle breeze blew across the hillside, blowing his long black hair. A thin, pale white figure stood at the edge of the cliff for a long time, as if he could stand at the end of the world forever. Duan Xiaoxi's dividing line. Today, as soon as he opened his eyes, he heard the long-lost chirping of the sapling. Master Silver, Cho-Cho missed you so much. Arbor, who initially thought he was hearing things, blinked his eyes and suddenly cried out in joy, Bull. You guys. Master Silver, quickly come in. The star field this time will give you a huge surprise. A huge surprise. A trace of delight instantly rose in Xiao Mu's heart. A surprise that could catch Cho-Cho's eye must be super big. Even though she was standing outside now, she could still feel the divine power in the star field fluctuating. Her dantian seemed to have been injected with great vitality. Was there a new auxiliary star that had been activated? Arbor's body swayed, and a stretch of green mountains came into view. After a breath of fresh air, Sir Jojo quietly opened his eyes. He looked at everything in front of him with some surprise. Cho-Cho, is this the last of the 4 auxiliary stars? This information instantly appeared in Arbor's mind. Chapter 3942. More than that, Master. A dancing little tray ant ran over from a distance and said excitedly, Master, you're rich. Master, do you know what's buried in these mountains? Arbor looked at it with sparkling eyes with an expression that said, Hurry up and tell me, I'm listening. God's stone mine. That's not rare. The little tray ant waved its branches and laughed. The main thing is the holy vein. You can mine holy stones in the future for the crown prince and the others to use. Arbor's eyes lit up, and she nodded happily. That's great. Holy stone mine, she was happy when she heard it, and then she thought of the mine that ancestor Chao Yang mentioned. She still had to find a time to dig it back so that she could be at ease. Master Silver, the little water child and the lump of dirt rolled over together, calling out loudly in succession. The 2 little ones jumped to her feet, pulled her skirt on both sides, and rolled up. Master, are you excited? Are you surprised? Cho-Cho, why did you say half and keep half? The little water child was excited. Master, do you know? We're really rich this time. Arbor looked at this guy expressionlessly. This guy talked for a long time, but he didn't get to the point. Master, the main star is open. After listening to the little water child and Cho-Cho's nonsense for a long time without getting to the point, the dirt lump couldn't hold it in anymore and quickly said. The little water child and Cho-Cho stared at it with their small eyes at the same time. Who told you to talk so much? They also wanted to tell Master about this. Arbor heard it and immediately became energetic. She glanced at the continuous mountains under her feet. I'll name this place Mountain Star. What do you think? Master, you have a good name. The little water child immediately flattered and raised both hands and feet in agreement without hesitation. Master. The little dirt lump rolled to Arbor's neck and rubbed against it. Master, take us to the main star to have a look. After the main star was opened, the 3 of them felt a majestic power spread out from the main star. Once something got close, it would be pushed away. In other words, the main planet seemed to only welcome its master, Jojo, and did not like foreign contact at all. All right. Arbor nodded and immediately put the 3 on his body. Just as he was about to move, he suddenly saw a small vortex appear beside him. In an instant, Mo Lien appeared beside her with a smile on her face. Jojo. You're back. Arbor jumped forward, grabbed his hand, and said delightedly, just in time. Come with me to the main planet. Mo Lien was stunned. She looked up at the mountains around her. Isn't this a new planet? Why, two this time? Arbor nodded, held his hand, and said, the main star is also open. Chocho said that even they can't enter the main planet. Only I can take you in. The little lady's slightly tsundere expression made Mo Lien want to laugh. A long time ago, the little girl had to rely on Chocho to enter the star sector. Now that she knew that Chocho and the others could not enter the main planet and had to rely on her to bring them in, she immediately felt satisfied. Lotus, who was observant, immediately nodded and praised, my Jojo is the best. Jojo, quickly take us in to have a look. The environment of the main planet must be very good. Arbor nodded. This time, she did not keep them in suspense and pulled Mo Lien's hand. Chapter 39-43. Arbor carried Little Water Child, Soil Lump, and Chocho. With a thought, he immediately appeared on the main planet. What entered his sight was a winding jade river that was green like water but not water. It was like a jade-belled river that slowly extended into the distance. It was a dragon. No. It was not a dragon. It was a half-liquid dragon that was glowing with pearls and was as graceful as a stream. As the breeze blew in, everyone smelled a refreshing fragrance that was extremely pleasant to the nose. Arbor held Mo Lien's hand and ran forward. He lowered his head and looked at the flowing light under his feet. Wow, what is this? Little Water Child had a surprised expression on his face. He stretched out his little arms and legs and ran forward. Look at it, it's so delicious. That soft crystal rippled with a natural green color. Just looking at it would greatly increase one's appetite. Jade Dragon. This term suddenly popped up in Arbor's mind, and his eyes lit up with excitement. It was a jade dragon. It could be used to refine pills. If it was dug out and eaten directly, it would only be a small amount. The size of a fingernail was equivalent to the effect of 10 divinity pills. If it was used to refine saint-level pills to increase the cultivation of the transcendent realm, the little girl's eyes lit up as she turned to look at her husband. Do you want to try it? Let's each have a spoonful. Yay, yay. Before Mo Lien could reply, Chocho and the Little Water Child had already danced and cheered loudly on the other end. Arbor curled his lips and took out 4 small spoons from his inner world and handed them to each of them. He took another one and held it in his hand. Then, 2 big ones and 3 small ones stood at one end of the Jasper Heaven Jade Dragon. They stared at the jade-like object that was as green as a stream. Master, it's time to eat. Chocho shouted and was the first to run over. He used a small spoon to dig out a piece and immediately put it into his mouth, chewing it. When the others saw this, they naturally did not want to fall behind. They quickly dug out a small spoonful and swallowed it. Master, it's so delicious. Master, can I have another spoonful? No. Arbor quickly shook his head. You can only eat 1 spoonful every 7 days. It wasn't that he couldn't bear to let them eat more, but the medicinal power of this thing was too fierce. If they ate too much, it would impact the strength in their bodies. Eating less nourishment would accumulate over time, and it would be of great benefit to his advancement in the future. Afraid that the saplings would not understand and secretly eat it behind his back, Sir Jojo hurriedly said, "This Jasper Sky Jade Dragon is good, but you can't eat too much of it. If you eat too much, your body won't be able to take it. The impact will tear you apart from the inside. Because your essence, energy, and spirit can't keep up with this kind of violent increase in speed. If you increase too quickly, it will cause the divine power in your body to become chaotic. Explode. The little tray ant obediently put down the spoon and nodded its little head with a serious expression. Jojo didn't know what was going on with Lotus, but Sir Jojo himself felt that his realm had loosened a little. If he immediately went into seclusion now, he should be able to advance by a small realm. This was only a small spoonful of Jasper Sky Jade Dragon. A certain someone was excited and wanted to take a good look at the situation of this main planet, so he put aside the matter of advancing in realm. Come, let's walk further in. I have a very familiar feeling. Arbor pulled Mo Lien's hand and quickened his pace, following the direction of the Jasper Sky Jade Dragon. She had definitely been to this place before. The 8th night watch ended. Chapter 39-44. Arbor's anxious mood immediately infected Mo Lien and the 3 little ones. The Crown Prince's hands drooped slightly and allowed his little wife to hold his hand. He was almost running forward. The Jade Dragon was emerald green, winding its way to a courtyard that was surrounded by fresh flowers and blooming green flowers. It gently embraced the entire courtyard. It was as if a pearl in the sea was being treated so gently. Xiao Mu slowly halted her steps and reflexively gripped her husband's fingers, her eyes glistening with moisture. Pushing open the courtyard door that was covered in green plants, it was as if she had pushed open a memory locked in the depths. Following the trail of medicinal fragrance, Xiao Mu slowly walked forward and stared fixedly at a tree in the middle of the courtyard. Master, will I grow tall? Of course you'll grow tall. You're 7 years old now. Let's plant this osmanthus tree. 10 years later, you'll be 17 years old, and it'll be 10 years old. 10 years will pass in the blink of an eye. By then, you'll have grown up, and I'll be old as well. Then little treasure will make you beauty pills. This way, Master will never grow old. Arbor stared at the tree in a daze. Her little hand could not help but touch it and gently caress the bark. The moment she raised her head, a breeze blew past her face. The fragrance of osmanthus and the fine petals were scattered. This place seemed to carry too many of her memories. As a result, with every step she took, she seemed to be able to see those familiar figures smiling and waving at her. Arbor pushed open the door of the room and stood quietly at the door. She looked at her gorgeous and dignified boudoir. Her fingers touched the long screen window engraved with green bamboo and the blooming autumn moon begonia in front of the window. She gently swept the spotless windowsill and touched the beauty couch in front of the window. Her gaze was fixed outside the window. She watched quietly and almost didn't blink. Swords are murder weapons. The moment you draw your sword, you should realize this. Disciple, villains like to talk a lot of nonsense. When we subdue the enemy, don't be long-winded with them. Making them shut up forever is the best choice. I point my sword at the sky. What can the sky do to me? She stood there, looking out the window with a calm expression. It was as if she could see 2 incomparably beautiful figures, faintly discernible, like butterflies flying through flowers. 2 swords clashed rapidly, making clanging sounds. She moved her gaze away from the screen and walked out. Her small hand gently pushed open the door to the study next door and walked in. She walked over and looked at the 2 writing desks, one big and one small. She obediently sat in front of the small writing desk and stroked the paper in front of her. There were 2 drops of ink on it, and a crooked word was written on it, Joe. It was as if she could see the years when the woman gently held her little hand that was almost transparent and white, writing stroke by stroke on the rice paper. Master, Uncle Master. The little girl choked with sobs and cried out. Her tears fell with a plop, staining the 2 ink stains. Prince Mo had been silently following behind her. Seeing her like this, he hurriedly went up to hold her shoulder and asked softly, Jojo, did you remember something? I remembered a lot, a lot. Arbor choked and said softly, I don't know why my soul exploded. But after my soul exploded, I know where I went. My soul is drifting away with the wind. Chapter 39:45. On that day, at that moment, in that gloomy forest where no light could be seen, I met my master and martial uncle. It was as if everything was predestined. Arbor walked to the cabinet beside the desk and glanced at the furnishings on it. Suddenly, she reached out and took a square golden box. She opened the lid of the box and her gaze fell on the golden beans that were neatly arranged in a row. Sir Jojo slowly reached out and picked up a golden bean. Suddenly, he threw it out of the window. Bang! After a sound was heard, a terrifying power suddenly burst out from the golden bean. A golden statue that was more than 10 meters tall suddenly appeared at the window. Arbor hugged the golden box tightly. Her eyes moved slightly and fixed on the golden statue. Golden basket, golden beans. It's been a long time. Sir Jojo turned to look at Emolien, who was standing beside him and staring at him intently. He held her hand. Do you want to take a look at my treasure trove? Emolien was really shocked this time. There's more. Wow, his wife was so rich. Even he felt a sense of pressure. Who do you think my master and Uncle Master are? Arbor waved her hand. A row of reveal talismans slid out from her sleeve and landed behind the small house. The tranquil air trembled slightly. Then a patch of green appeared in the distance. Mountains and rivers appeared layer by layer in front of everyone like a painting that was being pushed open. An extremely majestic palace was also like a veil that was being pulled open. Bit by bit, from the sharp corners of the eaves to the picturesque corridors, and then the entire enormous palace suddenly appeared. The three little ones behind Emolien looked at the visual shock in front of them and exclaimed in unison. Xiao Mu clapped her small hands, and her lips involuntarily curled into a smile. She pointed at the Hall of Longevity's plaque and asked, Cho-Cho, transplant the longevity tree here, okay? Yes, yes. This place is rich in divine power. Other planets can't compare to it. If we plant the longevity tree here, it'll definitely bear many fruits. Arbor nodded in satisfaction. Holding her husband's hand, she ran all the way inside. Entering the longevity palace, their eyes were filled with small balls of light. Little by little, they were as bright as stars. They hung high above the palace and emitted a soft light. Wow, are those all seals? The little water child grabbed Arbor's skirt and climbed up. He sat high up and looked up at the balls of light above the dome. Xiao Mu flew up and grabbed one of the light orbs with her small, fair hand. She peeled off the outer layer of light and took out a cyan light short sword. After brandishing it a few times, she floated to the ground and walked to Emolien's side with her sleeves fluttering. Hubby, this is for you. Xiao Mu blinked her large eyes as she presented that green-edged short sword to Emolien. Good sword. Emolien's eyes flickered. She raised her hand and took the short sword. She swiped it in the air and a long strand of hair was cut from the middle. It floated to the ground and flew far away. This is... Emolien's eyes flickered. She reached out and touched the short sword. Her eyes were slightly shocked. This short sword was made too perfectly. There were 3 pieces of gemstones on the hilt. But she could feel the flow of energy in them. Speed up, attack speed, and also a strange power. Emolien tested it out with the short sword, and his figure instantly flashed to a location 10 meters away. Chapter 39:46. The Crown Prince's eyes flashed with shock as he looked at his wife. The power of space. Arbor nodded her head like a chick pecking at rice. Does my husband like it? This is the origin returning weapon made by Marshall Uncle. She paused and tilted her head. That's right. It's equivalent to a holy weapon here. As expected of a master's product. The Crown Prince sighed at his own inferiority. Jojo's master was too powerful. Just the crafting of this dagger was enough to show how powerful he was. Wife. The Crown Prince flashed to Chow Mu's side and pulled her into his embrace. He nuzzled against her and said, "Hubby will like whatever you give hubby." Jojo blinked. "Where's the dog poop?" Mo Lien was speechless. Why was this little guy such a killjoy? Shouldn't her husband be smiling shyly at him and then pouncing on him for a kiss when he was whispering sweet nothings? Arbor was obviously in a good mood. She tugged on Mo Lien's arm and revealed a rare smile. "I'm just kidding. Why would I give you dog poop? You're Jojo's Ren, the most important person to Jojo. Jojo will give you anything you like." The little guy hooked his arm and dragged him to the second floor. The second floor was even more dazzling. It was gorgeous and stunning. Rows of colorful medicine bottles floated in front of them. Each color was arranged in a small square and there were about 1,000 bottles of each type. Arbor held her husband's hand and rummaged through the floor for a long time. She ran to the shelves against the wall and took out a box. She opened it and took out a fragrant lollipop. Mo Lien leaned over and couldn't help but suppress his smile. This box of lollipops that children love to eat was most likely given by Jojo's Marshall uncle to coax the children. Arbor unwrapped the thin candy wrapper and licked it. She turned to look at her husband. "Husband, do you want some?" Mo Lien nodded reluctantly. "If you want to feed me, I can consider it." Arbor snorted and rolled his eyes at him. He then brought the candy to his lips. "This isn't candy. It's medicine." She pulled on his sleeve and dragged him up another floor. This floor was mostly filled with materials. Half of the floor was filled with medicinal herbs, while the other half was filled with refining materials. It was a dazzling sight, making one unable to take their eyes off it. After reading all this, Mo Lien couldn't help but silently close her mouth. Her voice was unhurried as she said, "Your master and Marshall uncle are indeed extraordinary." Such a grand arrangement simply made people gasp in amazement. Sir Jojo glanced at him and said dryly, "I stole some too." Mo Lien, the two of them walked hand in hand to the fourth floor of the main hall. Chocho's green wooden face was now completely expressionless. Compared to her master's wealth accumulation methods, her master and Marshall uncle seemed to be on a higher level. Sure enough, it was passed down from generation to generation. Arbor stood on the first floor, her eyes rippling slightly. She looked up at the balls of light and seemed to be searching for something. Compared to the first two floors, the medicine and materials were arranged neatly and orderly. On this floor, the balls of light of various sizes floated up and down, appearing much more disorderly. Looking at his wifey's happy face as she shuttled back and forth between the balls of light, Mo Lien pursed his lips and smiled slightly. Digging for treasures was indeed the most suitable thing for his wifey. Arbor slowly approached two of the balls of light. Chapter 39:47. She reached out and took it down, her eyes filled with warmth and gentleness. Arbor stared deeply at the little thing wrapped in the two halos and reached out to touch it. But very quickly, her hand was repelled by the power of the seal. "This is..." Mo Lien walked forward and looked at the snow-white thing inside the seal. She saw a small snow-white thing curled up inside, but she couldn't see its face. Arbor put down her little hand and sighed softly. When I first met Master cut it out from its dying mother's body. It was born before a month, and its congenital deficiency made it grow very slowly. Arbor said lightly. It's a white unicorn, very beautiful. It was rare for the little guy to praise something beautiful. Mo Lien heard this and raised her eyebrows vigilantly. Then this is. Mo Lien's gaze fell on the other ball of light. The little beast inside was a little strange. Its body was about the same size as the little unicorn, but its whole body emitted a strange five-colored light. Red, yellow, blue, green, and purple. The 5 light colors alternated one after another, and it looked very strange. Xiao Mu placed her hand on the seal, and this time, she quickly carried the little beastie out from inside. The corner of his mouth held a trace of a smile, and subconsciously, Lord Jojo made a gesture of poking its fleshy body. The little beast moved its body and blinked its watery eyes. It lazily raised its little head. When its gaze met with Arbor's, it was first stunned, then almost immediately jumped up, whining as it quickly pounced on Arbor's face. Arbor calmly reached out to block in front of his eyes, and pulled down the reckless 5-colored treasure beast. Her pair of big eyes were bright and sparkling. Arbor reached out and poked its round body, his eyes full of interest. Even though Mo Lien was experienced and knowledgeable, she had never seen such a little beast. She couldn't help but tug at Jojo's little hand. Jojo, did you also pick up this little beast in the past? Arbor thought for a moment, then nodded vigorously and said, it's called the 5-colored treasure beast. Feed it herbs, and it can spit out pills. Feed it ancient jade, and it can spit out jadeite and the like. Mo Lien nodded. If that's the case, it's really a strange little thing. Whimper. The little beast rolled around in Arbor's arms happily, a pair of black eyes staring straight at Arbor for a long time. Arbor couldn't help but raise his hand to stroke its round and chubby little body, and poked it, his little hand to its chin. The chubby little fellow immediately revealed a bitter expression and rolled back and forth in her arms. Arbor didn't pay it any mind and poked it again. The 5-colored treasure beast immediately pulled a long face and spat out a pill, pretending to be exhausted, and went limp in her hand. Arbor couldn't help but laugh. He picked up a ball-shaped leaf and waved it in front of it. Little Treasure's eyes immediately lit up. Stop pretending. The little stoic said aloofly as she reached out to feed it. You used to lie to me that I was young, so I fell for your trick. She raised her hand to pinch its furry little body. Now I know that with your current abilities, it's a cinch for you to spit out 100 pills at a time. Little Treasure shook its little body, revealing a hopeless expression. Arbor pursed his lips. Ha ha. Little Mastiff seemed to be even scarier than before. Little Treasure started to worry deeply about the safety of its life. Chapter 39-48. Xiao Mu curled her lips as she looked at that lifeless furry face. She raised her hand to gently stroke its furry head. You don't need to worry. Your master has given me as many pills as you want. I won't let you puke like a dog so easily. Woof. You're not a dog. Arbor's little face darkened. I said you're a little dog and you're freaking panting. Little Treasure looked at its little master in confusion. I didn't bark. Xiao Mu blinked and cast a glance at the ground. She saw 3 little puppies rushing over at some point and circling around her. Ha! Didn't they say that no external objects could get close to her main planet? What were these 3 doing? Were these 3 dogs or not? Xiao Mu couldn't figure it out no matter how hard she racked her brains. Seeing those 3 hopping over and biting her skirt, the little fellow helplessly swung her legs before poking Little Treasure again, causing it to pitifully spit out 2 more pills. She gathered 3 pills and threw them to the 3 little fellows. The 3 little puppies were satisfied. Arbor glanced at the top floor of the palace and said hesitantly to Mo Lien, let's go out first. Okay. Prince Mo nodded. His little wife held his hand and led him out of the magnificent palace. Xiao Mu's finger twitched, and it didn't take her long to drag the rowdy crowd to her side. Wow! Why is there a palace here? Little sister-in-law, what is this place? We couldn't even enter this planet just now. Limitless Blade and the others were yelling, causing the little fellow to feel a little uncomfortable. Too noisy. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal closed his fan with a smile and smacked the back of Dao Wuji's head. Shut up. Then he blinked and looked at Jojo. Jojo, is this the main planet? This place is indeed rich in divine power. The Peony Fairy said. Even Fish Orchid Planet and Forest Planet can't compare to the density of divine power here. The little fellow was speechless. She glanced at them and thought of something. You guys seem to, what if he had advanced? Fairy Ginkgo nodded her head and said with a smile, that Phoenix Spring is indeed a good place. Now that the saint energy has been depleted, but when we came out, we found that the place could slowly generate saint energy on its own. I should be able to recover in about 10 days. Holy Sunmi Yen smiled and nodded. It is indeed a good place. Jojo was a little embarrassed. Speaking of the Phoenix Spring, she felt a little guilty. It was not that she had to take the Phoenix clan's treasure, but the situation was critical. He-Chin and the others were all cultivating in the Phoenix Spring. If he did not capture them in time and bring them back to the forest planet, they would all sink to the bottom of the water. Jojo, let's go. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal tilted his head and glanced at Mo Lien, who looked like a door god. Prince Mo casually glanced back and snorted. Dao Wuji asked curiously, what's in this palace? It was a grand sight, so there must be something extraordinary inside. Don't worry about the palace for now. If Jojo doesn't go there, he'll turn the world upside down. Arbor blinked in confusion. What's the matter? Let's go to the forest planet. He-Chen's mouth twitched in amusement. Your 800 gold figures are about to fight with someone. Arbor was very puzzled. With a wave of her hand, she and the others arrived at the forest planet. The Phoenix Spring was currently shrouded in layers of faint halos. Arbor subconsciously reached out to touch it, but her fingers were pushed away by a repelling force. Before the saint energy recovers, the Phoenix Spring cannot be opened. Chapter 39-49. Arbor nodded and tilted her head to listen. There seemed to be the sound of wind whistling nearby, accompanied by the sounds of birds chirping. The little fellow was astonished and hastily ran with everyone to a hillside behind Phoenix Spring. At first glance, it really was quite lively. The 800 gold figures that she had casually stored inside were currently pacing back and forth on the hillside. To be precise, they were fighting a group battle with two beasts, one black and one purple, that were shrieking fiercely in the air. The purple was bewitching, while the black was pure. The two beasts fluttered their long tail feathers as they flew back and forth in the air, sometimes high and sometimes low. There was also a little white squirrel joining in the fun on the side. It raised its tail and whipped it from time to time as it stared at the two birds flying back and forth in the air, chirping angrily. Rustle, rustle, rustle. With a light movement, a little white snake suddenly darted out from the underbrush, the little golden crown on its head shining brightly under the sunlight. Arbor's footsteps quickened, and she hastily reached out to catch the little white snake that flew over with a swish. A faint smile curled on her lips. Ming, you're awake. The little white snake happily rolled around in the little stoic's hands. Mo Lien and Ji-Chin couldn't help but frown and roll their eyes when they saw its appearance. Please, you're a proper holy beast. Don't act cute every time you see a little girl. The little white snake had previously swallowed a divine beast and entered a state of deep sleep to advance. Right now, it was very obvious that it had reached the peak of the late stage of the growth stage. Even the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had to think twice before going up against such a powerful holy beast. You have the nerve to act cute. Acting cute every time you see a little girl. What's going on? Mo Lian and Jichen didn't say anything, but they both secretly ridiculed it in their hearts. Chirp chirp chirp. The little white squirrel abruptly lifted its chubby little legs and swung its tails. It angrily rushed over from the hillside and jumped into Arbor's arms. Chirp chirp chirp, chirp. It pointed at the hillside in exasperation, then pointed at the things flying in the sky. Mo Lian's face darkened. My wife's holy beasts didn't like to transform and didn't like to speak human language either. What should I do? Arbor looked up and saw the blazing blood phoenix flying over. At this moment it was fanning itself with the purple and black blazing blood phoenix, alas. Xiao Mu sighed with a headache. She took small steps and led the crowd of onlookers who didn't mind the commotion to the front of the hill. She grumpily hollered, "All of you, stop." Screech. The green phoenix boy, who was shooting from the side, flew to Arbor's shoulder and stood still. He pecked his feathers, jumped, and chirped complaining. Arbor! Exclamation point. You're all full of energy, aren't you? The little fellow gave them a meaningful look. The beasts standing in a row involuntarily shuddered, and their adorable eyes looked at Xiao Mu docilely. They all looked like they were saying, "I'm obedient. If you have nothing to do, you'll go to the peak star to mine from tomorrow onwards." Arbor glanced at the water kid and the dirt lump beside him. You two will be supervisors. The two raised their hands and feet in agreement. Chio looked gratified. Master, the peak star is currently filled with divine stone mines on the surface, but there are many hidden veins. If we dig them out, we'll be rich. Once the holy veins appear, holy power will flow out. When the time comes, it'll be beneficial to the cultivation of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and the others. The little girl nodded, indicating that she understood. She glanced sideways at the indignant blazing blood phoenix. Did you hear that? Where's the big ape? Chapter 3950. Don't think I didn't notice you flying into the sky from time to smash the two birds' bananas. Don't you think it's too much of a waste of food to smash them with food? Don't hide behind and watch the show. Go and dig with them tomorrow. The gorilla who flew over to meet the unexpected calamity instantly showed a hopeless expression, feeling that he had been tricked by the little girl. Please, he had just completed his advancement and had stolen half a day of leisure. Why was he being sent to mine again? After Arbor finished scolding these non-stop troublemakers, she turned her gaze to the two phoenix-like birds, one black and one purple. They were slightly slimmer than phoenixes. With a wave of her hand, the two bison, who had shrunk to the size of a sparrow, hurriedly swooped down and jumped in front of the little girl, flapping their wings. Arbor punched one of the black bison's head. Little black, little purple, why are you causing trouble as soon as you come out? The two bison, who were called Little Black and Little Purple, looked at each other in confusion. So, their names had been decided by the little Master Silver just like that. Wasn't it a little too casual? Mo Lian forcibly suppressed the smile at the corner of his mouth. Regarding his wife's habit of naming things based on their colors, Crown Prince Lian had no choice. Mo Lian patted his wife's head with a smile in his eyes. Mountain Star's terrain is continuous and undulating, and it's covered by the aurora. Many hidden mineral veins are hidden deep in the mountains. It's indeed a good idea to let a few idle and moldy sacred beasts mine. So that they wouldn't have to keep staring at his wife when they had nothing to do. Heh. All the beasts looked hopeless. Arbor pursed her lips and patted Little Purple's head as if coaxing a child. You two just came out of your eggshells, so you have to get along well with your little friends. Don't make a fuss. You can't fight either. Otherwise, I'll cook you. Arbor expressionlessly turned around and muttered to herself with her hands behind her back, I've never eaten phoenix meat. The birds shook their little bodies and drooped their little heads in unison. Arbor suddenly raised his hand and threw out several green, sparkling, and round pearls. She compressed the paste of the jade dragon into a bead shape and put some of it into a small box, making it easier to carry and distribute. Apart from the 3 puppies, it seemed that no one else could enter the main planet at will. Since that was the case, Arbor did not have to worry about one of them exploding and dying because of their greed for the Jasper Sky Dragon. Carrying the 3 puppies and stepping out of the star field, Arbor faintly said, Remember to mine. The beasts, big and small, looked at each other and revealed a bitter expression at the same time. The life of a beast is so difficult. After Xiao Mu exited the star domain and blocked out those noisy voices, she herded the 3 little puppies into the court to play. She pulled Mo Lian's hand and said, I'll go in tonight to advance. After that, I'll refine the pill. It'll probably take 3 to 7 days. Don't worry, I'll come out when the time comes. Mo Lian nodded obediently and reached out to hug his wife. Don't worry, I'll take care of things outside. The 2 of them walked around the main planet for so long, but only 2 hours had passed in the outside world. After breakfast, Jojo, Sama wanted to go back to her parents' home. Prince Mo naturally accompanied her back. Just as they walked to the entrance of the East Palace, they heard a servant report that King Zheng and his wife wanted to see them. Chapter 39:51. The young couple couldn't help but stare blankly at each other. Why would Mo Shikang and his wife suddenly come to visit? It was really strange. Speaking of which, they had a grudge with King Zheng because of his brother, Su Shihua. Su Shihua was beaten up by Sir Jojo in the Royal College and was sprayed with golden dragon flames. He wouldn't survive if he was carried home. When they heard that Su Shihua died in King Zheng's residence, the couple didn't pay attention to the matter. Whether this person died or not, it had nothing to do with her. In any case, she had left him alive at that time. It could be considered a favor to the old emperor. That was what Xiao Qiao thought. As for what the emperor thought, it didn't seem to matter. So annoying. Sir Jojo pursed his lips. He still wanted to go home and eat his mother's cooking. With Mo Shikang and his wife stirring things up, it seemed like his plan to go home today would be ruined. Arbor and Mo Lian walked to the front of the carriage and saw 2 eunuchs leading Mo Shikang and his wife over. The ordinary-looking consort Jing, Shi Yongyan, had a smile on her face. When she saw Arbor, she took the initiative to greet him. Greetings, Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Arbor curled his lips and a faint sharpness flashed across his eyes. This ordinary-looking consort Jing looked ordinary, but her scheming mind couldn't be compared to that idiotic second sister of hers. After what she did to the Shi family, the compensation nearly emptied the entire Shi family. He didn't expect to see this eldest miss again and greet him with such a calm attitude. If it were someone else, they would have exploded long ago. Arbor nodded slightly and glanced at Shi Yongyan without saying a word. What's the matter, Brother Zheng? Mo Lian spoke. King Zheng cupped his hands and said with a smile, I came abruptly. Please forgive me, Crown Prince. I thought that Brother King Zheng would be busy cultivating in the academy during this period of time. The academy's Heavenly Yuan Rankings finals were about to begin. Given King Zheng's character, he should value the resources he had. He did not seem like someone who would waste a lot of time accompanying Princess Consort Jing around the sovereign capital. King Zheng smiled faintly. I can cultivate whenever I want, but Madam's birthday is near. I still have to spend more time with Madam. Oh. Brother Zheng, what brings you here? King Zheng took out an invitation from his pocket. It's Madame's birthday. I hope that the Crown Prince and sister-in-law can come and have a chat. A dim light flashed in Prince Mo's eyes. He politely took the post and read it. 3 days later. A hint of hesitation appeared on his face. Jojo would need 3 to 5 to 7 days to level up and refine the soul-returning pill. He didn't know if Jojo would come out in 3 days. Princess Consort Jing chuckled. Is there a problem? Sir Jojo blinked and pulled down Mo Lian's hand, nodding. Since Brother Zhang and sister-in-law personally invited us, the Crown Prince and I will naturally show up on time. King Zhang was the Crown Prince's foster brother after all. It would seem too unreasonable to not show up since he personally came to invite them. The little girl naturally didn't wish for someone to gossip behind the Crown Prince's back and ruin his reputation. Seeing the little girl's actions, Princess Consort Zhang's eyes flickered rapidly. The Crown Prince did not agree, but the little girl directly agreed. It could be seen that this girl always had her own opinions in front of His Highness. The Crown Prince turned to glance at the little stoic and nodded with a smile. Okay. Remember to vote early today. See you tomorrow. Chirp. Chapter 3952. After leaving the Eastern Palace, Princess Consort Jing sat in the carriage in silence. What are you thinking about? His Highness the Crown Prince dotes on the Crown Princess so much. No wonder there's a rumor in the capital that it's easy to provoke the Crown Prince, but the Crown Princess will suffer. Just by looking at the Crown Princess' unbridled attitude in front of His Highness, one could tell how important this little girl was to His Highness. Mo Shikong looked up and coldly swept a glance at his wife. Are you envious? Princess Consort Jing snorted softly and turned to look out the window. She said softly, this concubine's life is already very good now. As long as that family stopped causing trouble for a few days, her life would actually be better. Speaking of which, the Emperor really didn't mistreat this adopted son. This should be mainly on account of the unconscious Her Highness. Ordinary people often said, contentment is bliss. Not to mention people like them who lived in the prince's estate. Thinking of the Shi family, Shi Yongyan couldn't help but sigh softly. It was obvious to all what happened to her second sister. There were some people that he couldn't afford to offend just because he wanted to. Princess Consort Jing was a smart person. She knew what to do and what not to do. He lowered his eyebrows and a gloomy expression appeared on his ordinary face. Prince Consort Jing glanced at her and then looked away. His mood was a bit more irritable. Back then, he had married the eldest daughter of the Shi family mainly because he valued the Shi family. Otherwise, with the Shi family's daughter's talent and appearance, how could he have taken a liking to her? But now, the Shi family was stepped on by the little Crown Princess and scared out of their wits. It looked like they wouldn't be able to get up again. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't disappointed. Mo Shikong knitted his brows tightly. It wasn't that he wanted to fight for anything. It was just that in his position, he didn't advance but retreated instead. Sometimes, one had to advance in life. Husband, you'd better remind that family not to provoke the Crown Princess that day, Princess Consort Jing said faintly. Otherwise, no one would be able to save them. Anger flashed in Mo Shikong's eyes. What family? They are your in-laws and sister-in-law. After her second brother left, that family had been causing trouble all day long. Shi Yongyan slightly lowered her head in disdain and was too lazy to say anything. In any case, she had already reminded them. It was up to them whether they followed her instructions or not. If they insisted on courting death in front of the Crown Prince, reality would teach them a lesson. The little Crown Princess had just arrived at the entrance of Changle North Street when the Chow family, who had heard the commotion, hurriedly opened the courtyard door and ran out to welcome her. When Wei Ziqin saw her daughter's carriage coming over, she hurriedly pulled her husband over and asked with a smile, "How was it, daughter? Did you encounter any danger on this trip to Phoenix Grove?" As he spoke, he saw the crown prince and the young crown princess getting off the carriage hand in hand. His eyes kept looking back and forth between the two of them. "Mother, what could have happened?" Arbor helplessly grabbed his mother's hand and pulled her into the courtyard. "How's the family these days?" "Good." Ever since the Sure family's misfortune, everyone in the imperial capital knew to avoid the young crown prince consort's residence and not provoke them. If the young crown prince consort decided to teach someone a lesson, she would make that person's balls hurt for the rest of their lives. The unlucky Sure family had now become paupers. Just the compensation alone had nearly emptied their family's savings. Not to mention the extent of being scared out of their wits. Chapter 3953. She reckoned that whenever the head of the Sure family closed his eyes, he would think of the little fellow's fiendish stoic face. Who knows, maybe he wouldn't be able to sleep well for several days straight. Mo Lien stepped forward to salute, and the Chiao family quickly pulled her away. Everyone chatted and laughed with the two people as they walked up the steps to the main entrance. However, they heard a clamor coming from the end of Changle North Street. Many passers-by hurriedly ran over, and some busybodies even shouted, "Hurry, hurry and take a look. The Lin family's miss is going to whip someone to death on the street." Wei Ziqin frowned and looked into the distance. They had been in the capital for many days. Changle North Street was close to the Imperial Palace, and it was bustling with people coming and going. The security was also very good. After living here for so long, she had never heard of anyone waving a whip on the street. Seeing her mother's unhappy expression, Arbor took her hand and said, "Mother, how about we go over and take a look?" Wei Ziqin hesitated. She didn't want to cause trouble for her daughter and son-in-law, but the clamor in the distance seemed to be getting louder and louder. She couldn't pretend that she didn't hear it. "That's fine, let's go over and see what's going on." Mo Lien nodded with a smile, but he cast a glance behind him. In the blink of an eye, a shadow slid past the corner of the wall and sprinted towards the source of the sound. The Chiao residence was only a few minutes' walk away from the scene of the disturbance. Chiao Zhongbang, second Uncle Chiao, and the others all followed. Arbor supported his mother and turned to look at second Aunt Ren. "Xiao Yao should be 5 months pregnant, right? Is her body well?" Madame Ren nodded with a smile. "She's doing very well. She's been taking the nutrient solution that Xiao Qiao gave her previously on time. Now, Xiaoyao's complexion looks rosy, and she's walking very energetically." Arbor nodded, appearing to be in a very good mood. In 4 more months, she would be able to have a little nephew and niece. The family chatted and laughed, and it was very lively. In a few minutes, they arrived at the scene of the disturbance. Quite a few people had already gathered there. They were whispering to each other, and some were secretly pointing at the center of the crowd. Arbor glanced at the words and his expression turned cold. Wei Ziqin and Madame Ren were even more shocked, and a trace of anger appeared in their eyes. He saw an arrogant woman standing in the middle of the circle. She was holding a black whip in her hand, and she was whipping a pair of mother and son in ragged clothes. In a flash, a shadow guard appeared beside the crown prince and reported the information he had gathered in a low voice. "Master, this subordinate found out that this pair of beggar mother and son bumped into Miss Lin's horse when they were walking, causing her beloved horse to be frightened and almost fall off." So Arbor's eyes immediately turned cold. Chiao Zhongbang and second Uncle Chiao furrowed their brows in anger. How can there be such a rude and unreasonable woman? "This is Miss Lin from Rong City's Lin family," the shadow guard said in a low voice. Mo Lien knitted his brows as he instructed that hidden guard apathetically, "Go teach her a lesson." Just leave her with her last breath. Yes. The shadow guard cupped his hands and was about to move when he saw a stone fly through the air and hit Miss Lin's small hand that was waving the whip. Lin Miao immediately felt a piercing pain on the back of her hand. She grimaced and almost dropped the whip on the ground. Who dares to go against my Rome City's Lin family? Ha, what an unruly and domineering woman. In the blink of an eye, another stone flew through the air. Chapter 3954. With a smack, it struck Lin Miaoer's shoulder again. Furthermore, this rock was even more ferocious than the previous one, causing Lin Miaoer to involuntarily retreat several steps. Ah! Lin Miaoer clutched her bleeding shoulder, and the whip in her hand also fell to the ground with a smack. Her bloodshot gaze roamed back and forth before suddenly fixing on the little stoic in the crowd. She pointed at her in exasperation and shouted, "You again." The little stoic. Qiao Zhongbang and the others looked at her in astonishment. How could they not know if their daughter had made a move? They were standing next to the little fellow and completely didn't see her make a move. Besides, the crown prince had already sent the shadow guards to teach this woman a lesson, so why should the little crown princess expend the mental and physical effort to teach this arrogant woman a lesson? Not every idiot had the chance to be taught a lesson by Sir Jojo. For example, this delicate guest from Chengdu's Lin family seemed like an arrogant patient who was always at odds with beggars. How did beggars become your whole family? Did she have to act like this? Arbor lowered his gaze and cast an indifferent glance, disinclined to reprimand this woman. She recognized who this woman was with a single glance. Chengdu's Lin family gave her an extremely bad impression. What kind of playthings came out of the family? She dared to boast shamelessly that she wanted to develop herself in the imperial capital? Could she develop herself? In any case, her husband would teach her how to behave. There was no need for Sir Jojo to do anything unnecessary. Preposterous. Mo Lien waved her hand coldly. That shadow guard immediately nodded and landed in front of Lin Miaoer with a whoosh. Only then did Lin Miaoer feel a sense of impending disaster. She stared vigilantly at the shadow guard in front of her and involuntarily exclaimed, "What are you doing?" That shadow guard didn't respond to her and directly grabbed her arm, lifting her up like a little chick. He squeezed, causing Lin Miaoer to spin several times on the spot. Lin Miaoer instantly felt stifled by the other party's strength. She spun several times on the spot, feeling somewhat unwell. "Do you know who I am?" Lin Miaoer shrieked. Before she could say anything, her mouth was hit by another rock. This time, she was done for. She actually knocked out a tooth beside her. Lin Miaoer stared at her tooth on the ground in horror and shrieked in exasperation, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. You actually dare ah." After getting hit by another rock in her stomach, Lin Miaoer curled up in pain. Her pair of venomous eyes glared in Qiao Mu's direction. By this time, Arbors, Muir, and Muirs. Lin, Mia, Muir. Lin, Muir, S, to Muirs, and with Muir, Lin, Muir, to Lin Mia to fourths to Lin Muir and Lin and fourth, Princess Wuxuang. The commoners in the crowd suddenly called out. Princess Wuxuang has returned from the border town. Ah, no wonder she's so nimble. It's not surprising that she's Princess Wuxuang. Arbor blinked and looked curiously at the red-clothed woman, only to see her suddenly turn her head and wave at her and Mo Lien with a smile. Chapter 3955. Arbor was momentarily dazzled. This girl's eyes were too pure and clean. Her small face couldn't be said to be very beautiful, but her eyes revealed a bit of decisiveness and determination, making her seem even more heroic than ordinary girls. When she revealed half of her porcelain white teeth and waved her claws at them with a brilliant smile, even Arbor, who had a stoic face, couldn't resist the urge to smile at her. Mo Lien looked down and saw that his wifey was intentionally smiling at Enrich, and his mood instantly soured. He reflexively grasped the little fellow's small hand and glared warningly at Enrich with a taut face. The latter tilted her head at him and then turned around to chuckle at Lin Muir, who was covered in cuts and bruises from being hit by rocks. She clicked her tongue and said, "I haven't returned to the capital for a while. I wonder how such a character appeared in the capital. Commandery Princess, this is a young lady from Chengdu's Lin clan." A young man wearing thin black armor stepped forward and presented a document to Commandery Princess Wuxuang with a solemn expression. Wuxuang blinked and accepted the thick stack of documents. She couldn't resist facepalming this little brother. This punk, why was he so methodical in his work? She only asked him to inquire about this person's identity, but he had the time to give her this stack of documents. Did he want her to stand here and flip through them in the middle of the street? How could she have such an eccentric personal subordinate? Mo Lien curled his lips and quietly said to his wife, "She's called Enrich, the king of Zhenyuan, and Cinny's daughter. Although she doesn't look reliable, she still has some merit in guarding the borders." On the other side, Enrich had already heard him talking bad about her. She turned around and rolled her eyes at him. The little stoic pursed her lips. Mo Lien wasn't someone who would easily give any evaluation. If he could say something like guarding the borders is not bad, it meant that his evaluation of Commandery Princess Wuxuang was quite high. Commandery Princess. Commandery Princess Wuxuang's subordinate, and Yang, looked back at his Commandery Princess in confusion. And Wuxuang nodded helplessly at him, then put the stack of documents into her inner world. She coughed lightly and said, "Pick the important ones and tell me about them." Nodding his head, and Yang expressionlessly said, "The Lin family moved to Chengdu less than 3 months ago. Not long ago, they wantonly purchased the land in the suburbs of the capital and even had a conflict with a farmer, killing the entire family. A few days ago, when the sons of the Lin family were drinking at Spring Wind Pavilion, they took liberties with a female singer and forced her to commit suicide by jumping off a building. Miss Lin Muir doesn't like beggars. Before today, they once organized a group of young masters and young ladies to slaughter a group of beggars at the Mu family's mountain gate. What nonsense are you spouting?" Lin Muir's piercing scream abruptly interrupted the guard's calm words. And Yang turned his head, looked at her expressionlessly, and ignored her. He turned back to his master and said, "Yesterday evening, the eldest son of the Lin family kidnapped a woman when he was shopping. That woman's husband went to the Lin family's door to seek justice, but was smashed with a bag of silver coins and was driven back with his tail between his legs. Everyone." Arbor hastily glanced at his husband, the accusation in his small eyes a bit obvious. "Why don't you know? He sent a simple royal guard to investigate in passing. Look, he even figured out the Lin family's background." Mo Lien. Chapter 3956. Lin Miao was trembling with anger. The guard was slandering the Lin family in broad daylight. She didn't even dare to look at the contemptuous gazes of the commoners around her. What right did these commoners have to look down on the young mistress of the Rong City's Lin family? How preposterous! Who did they think they were? They were just a bunch of worthless ants that could be trampled on like ants. She was the young mistress of the Lin family. With the Lin family's current development and status, it was only a matter of time before they replaced the Shi family. How dare these people treat her like this? Lin Miao was trembling with anger as she glared at the rowdy crowd. "Shut up, all of you. Don't shout. Shut up." The commoners felt a wave of fear when they saw her murderous expression. Some of the more timid ones naturally shut their mouths. You're spouting nonsense. Lin Miao glared at Enrich, finding her utterly detestable. If it weren't for the secret guard sent by Mo Lian holding her down, she would have jumped up and pounced on Princess Wushwang to tear her apart. Arbor glanced at the woman in disgust. The Rome City's Lin family had only moved to the imperial capital for a few months, but they had already committed so many crimes that even the heavens couldn't tolerate it. Princess Wushwang couldn't be bothered with her. She waved her hand and said to the secret guard, "Since the Lin family doesn't know how to educate their child, take her to their doorstep and return her to the Lin family. Supervise them and make sure they don't mess around in the imperial capital." "How dare you!" Lin Miao's eyes were almost spitting fire. Her entire body was trembling as she suddenly screamed, "You! Let go of me! Let go! Let go!" Ah! Her hands were tied up with ropes, and Lin Miao was pushed forward. She stumbled a few steps forward in a sorry state. "Who are you? Who are you? How dare you?" Lin Miao was trembling with anger and couldn't speak a complete sentence. A commoner beside her immediately looked at her with disdain and said proudly, "You don't even know our Princess Wushwang." "That's right. Princess Wushwang is the heroine of our borders. Who do you think you are? How dare you yell at our Princess Wushwang?" Lin Miao was furious, and her cold eyes stared at the three people who had mocked her. That gaze made it seem as if he wanted to eat them alive. The commoners couldn't help but tremble. His sharp and terrifying gaze made them all shut their mouths, not daring to say another word. On the other side, Wushwang had already asked Yang to get the medicine and went to comfort the frightened mother and son. She waved her hand and ordered Yang, "Take her home." Let me go, let me go." Lin Miao snapped. But who would care about her feelings? The secret guard dragged her along while Yang led the way. The two of them dragged the screaming woman all the way back to the Lin family. On the other hand, Wushwang walked to Mo Lian in Arbor with a chuckle and reached out to grab the little stoic small hand in a clumsy manner. "Younger sister, this is the first time we've met. I've embarrassed myself in front of you." "What sister?" Mo Lian glared at her. "Call me sister-in-law." "Humph." Wushwang pursed her lips and then grabbed Arbor's small hand while beaming from ear to ear. "Sister-in-law, look at brother's fierce appearance. You must help me teach him a good lesson." Arbor pursed her lips and shook her head honestly. "I'm helping husband." Wushwang's small face fell. Chapter 3957. Heavens, this little fellow looked dazed, adorable, and incomparably exquisite, but he didn't expect her to be a scoundrel. As expected of Mo Lian's wife, she was as scoundrelly as him. No wonder they could become a couple. Wushwang couldn't resist rolling her eyes at the young couple. "My life is hard. I was bullied by eldest brother in the past, and now even sister-in-law won't help me." Mo Lian's lips turned up slightly. He was in an extremely good mood as he held Arbor's small hand and left Wushwang with an annoying back view. "If my wife doesn't help me, who will she help? Get married, of course. After you get married, you'll have one more person to help you. Marrying is also fine." Mo Lian chuckled. "Third Fu probably won't mind." Wushwang was thoroughly choked, and then she snorted. The little stoic looked curiously at her husband, her meaning obvious. What past did this commandery Princess Wushwang have with third young Sir Fu? "It's a long story." Mo Lian chuckled lightly. "He's a gifted scholar and a peerless beauty, but this pair, Wushwang's charming face darkened, and she said nastily, "Shut up. Mo Lian winked at the little fellow with an expression that said, "I'll tell you when we get home." The eyes of the gossipy Qiao lit up, and she nodded, exchanging a look with her husband in tacit understanding. "Hey!" And Wu Shuang was exasperated. Don't think she didn't see the exchange of looks between the young couple. How did she, the dignified commandery Princess Wu Shuang, become the target of other young couples' gossip? Damn it. Brother, I'm telling you to shut up. You're not allowed to talk nonsense in front of my sister-in-law. You're ruining my reputation. Ignore her, Mo Lian muttered quietly and turned to walk towards Wei Ziqin. Mom, let's go back first. Wei Ziqin nodded with a smile, sweeping away her bad mood from earlier. She held her daughter's hand and said, Mom made your favorite 4 happiness dumplings for you. The little girl's eyes lit up. She turned around and looked at the bitter Princess Wu Shuang. She coughed lightly and said, Shall we go together? Princess Wu Shuang immediately ran over and nodded. She glared at Mo Lian and said, Okay, okay. Wei Ziqin smiled and said, Please, Your Highness. Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. Just call me Wu Shuang. The news that Princess Wu Shuang had taught Miss Lin a lesson on the street and sent her home spread all over the capital in less than half a day. Everyone applauded. After all, the Lin family had never done anything good ever since they came to sovereign capital. Now, he was like a rat crossing the street, and everyone was yelling at him non-stop. Family head Lin sat in the main hall with a face full of anger, glaring at the 2 men in black standing in the main hall of his family. He had already figured out the identities of these 2 people. One of them was one of the Crown Prince's secret guards. He was a level 10 divine master and was most likely a member of the Purple Forest Guard. The other was one of Princess Wu Shuang's guards. His name was Yang, and he spoke in a methodical manner. Although his face was expressionless, the words that came out of his mouth made people feel stifled. Things like, I'm here on the orders of the princess to send your daughter home, and I hope your manner will discipline her well. Don't let her out to scare people. Patriarch Lin was infuriated just by hearing those words. Patriarch Lin, I hope you will discipline your family well, Yang said coldly. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the outer hall. He saw several Purple Forest Guards escorting a disheveled man out, supporting a frightened young woman whose hairpins were disheveled. Dalong! Patriarch Lin shouted angrily and turned to look at the uninvited guests. Chapter 3958. You! The Lin family head glared at the men who were grabbing Lin Dalong and snapped, Who are you? Actually, he already had an idea in his heart. To be able to get in and out of the Lin family so quickly and directly pull his son out, he was definitely not an ordinary person. What he didn't expect was that the Crown Prince's men would arrive so quickly. The Lin family head glared hatefully at his son, exasperated at his failure to live up to his expectations. Now that the rumors outside had spread like wildfire, no matter how wealthy he was, he had no choice but to avoid the brunt of it. A Purple Forest Guard cupped his hands and said coldly, We've received news that your son raped a woman. The people from the capital office will be here soon. Lin family head, please pack up and hand your son over to the capital office. Lin Dalong twisted his body and shouted angrily, You dare, you! Father, father, save me, father! The Lin family head was so angry that smoke rose from his head. He gripped the armrest tightly and shot to his feet. He glanced at his daughter, who was being held to the side, and then at his son, who had been dragged out. The Lin family head's old face was filled with anger. Everyone, let's talk this out. The Purple Forest Guard didn't bother to waste time with them. He waved his hand and had the weeping woman sent out. He then turned to the Lin family head and said, Lin family head, please cooperate. Father, father. Lin Dalong was being escorted out the door. He stretched his head and shouted, "Father, father, save me, father." Chaotic footsteps could be heard coming from the door. The Lin family head looked up and saw Chao Jito from the capital office rushing in with a group of people. He waved his hand and took Lin Daolong away without saying a word. "Take him away!" Chao Jito shouted angrily. He didn't even look at the gloomy Lin family head as he ordered his men to kidnap Lin Daolong and leave. The Lin family head cursed in anger. He turned and saw his daughter, Lin Miao, stand up with a wronged expression. He raised his hand and slapped her. "You evil creature. If it weren't for this evil creature causing trouble, how could others target the Lin family and find out so many things in just a few minutes?" Lin Miao had already been wronged, and now that she was slapped, she burst into tears. Madame Lin's heart ached as she stepped forward to hug her daughter. She turned her head and complained, "Master, why did you hit her?" "Miao didn't do it on purpose. If it weren't for this evil creature, how would the Lin family be in so much trouble?" The head of the Lin family scolded angrily, "Go back to your own court immediately and reflect on your mistakes. Think clearly about what you have done wrong." "Master." Madame Lin comforted him gently, "Don't be angry. Since Daolong has been taken to the capital office, there's still room for negotiation. Let's go beg His Highness King Jing first." Master Lin's expression softened slightly. He glanced at Madame Lin and said, "You and Madame Su are cousins, and you usually get along well. I'll have to trouble you to mediate Daolong's matter. Look at what the patriarch is saying." Madame Lin smiled sweetly. "Although Daolong isn't my biological son, you must know how I've treated him over the years. Now that something has happened to Daolong, as his mother, if I don't take responsibility for him, who else can?" The head of the Lin family grunted. He turned back to look at Lin Miao. His gaze fell on her swollen mouth, and he was furious. He snorted heavily. "Don't make a fool of yourself at Princess Consort Zhang's birthday in a few days." Chapter 3959. Father. Lin Muir stomped her feet in anger. Madame Lin tugged at her, winked at her, and pulled her back. After the head of the Lin family left, she pinched her daughter and said, "Really, your father is angry, why did you go and talk back to him? Big brother caught a bitch himself. What does this have to do with me? He was the one who was indiscreet and gave the capital office something to use against him." All right. Madame Lin patted her hand lovingly and poked her with a finger. "You should control your temper in the future. Don't you know who those people are? Why do you dare to provoke them? That Princess Wushuang is the only daughter of King Jinyuan." "Who is King Jinyuan?" "He is a brother of His Majesty's who has been through life and death situations. 17 years ago, when King Fulin rebelled, King Jinyuan was in the north and helped His Majesty stabilize the situation. He is a meritorious official. Princess Wushuang also went to the battlefield at the age of 13 and is an invincible female warrior. You can provoke anyone, but you have to provoke such a person." Madame Lin couldn't help but sigh. "You really have to control your temper in the future. Mother only has one daughter, you can't let anything happen to you." Madame Lin patted her daughter's hand. Lin Muir curled her lips and covered her aching mouth. "Isn't that in Wushuang also a bully? How dare she treat me like this because of His Majesty's favor?" "All right," Madame Lin said helplessly. "Go find a doctor to fix your teeth in the next 2 days, and tidy up your makeup. 3 days later, come with Mother to attend Princess Zhang's birthday. There are so many young talents in the imperial capital, there must be one who is suitable for my daughter." Lin Muir blushed, stamping her feet. "But father said I'm not allowed to go out." "Your father does whatever he wants, you just have to prepare well. Mother will persuade him." Lin Muir nodded happily. Thank you, Mother. Arbor sat in his little courtyard. After accompanying the family for a meal, he watched Xiaosun practice writing for a while. This little rascal had never been a normal person. After writing for a while, he would sneak glances at her. He saw her sitting at the side and flipping through a medical book. Xiao Sen's small and lousy handwriting was crooked. Mo Lian looked at him speechlessly. Don't you have equestrian and archery lessons this afternoon? Go earlier. Xiao Sen hurriedly threw away his pen as if he had been granted amnesty. After bidding farewell to his sister and brother-in-law in a hurry, he ran out like a bird that had been released from its cage. Arbor rolled her eyes at her husband and said in annoyance, "You're always indulging him." In his previous life, this kid had been raised to be a playboy, so in this life, Arbor had repeatedly told his parents to discipline him strictly. Mo Lian giggled as she sat beside her. She held her little hand and said, "Xiao Sen is still young. Teach him slowly." Arbor flipped a page of his book and looked up. I told Mother that I'll be in seclusion at home for the next few days. I'll be going to the main planet in a bit. The little fellow said aloofly, I need absolute silence. Refining a resurrection pill above her level was no joke. If she failed, she might even suffer a bit of a backlash from the pill. Okay. Mo Lian nodded. I'll take those 3 puppies with me. I definitely won't let them disturb you. The little stoic grunted in response. After eating snacks in the afternoon, Arbor entered the main planet. Just as he left, a mechanical bird flapped its wings and landed on the windowsill. See you tomorrow. Chapter 3960. At that moment, Mo Lian was carrying 3 little puppies that were running around in the courtyard into the house. Suddenly, she saw the mechanical bird that appeared on the windowsill. Her eyes flickered slightly, and she poked the bird lightly with her finger. The bird's beak opened and closed, and Yun Piaomiao's voice emerged from within. Student Xiao, I hope you can return to school immediately. I have an extremely important matter to discuss with you. Mo Lian knitted his brows as he gazed over quietly. The mechanical bird completed its task and flew out from the windowsill. It flapped its 2 wooden wings and flew further and further away in the twilight. Eventually, it turned into a small black dot and disappeared into the horizon. Although Yun Piaomiao was not very reliable, he would not send a mechanical bird to find the couple over some trivial matters. This meant that Dean Yun indeed had something important to discuss with his wife. But Mo Lian pinched the green vine in his sleeve and entered Paradise Planet. He left the 3 little puppies behind and circled around the stool where he disappeared, barking angrily. Crown Prince. Chio and Little Water Droplet hopped over in a very flattering manner, tugging at his clothes and calling out repeatedly, Crown Prince. Mo Lian's mouth twitched, and he bent down to pick up the 2 little ones from the ground. Where are they? Little Two and the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal brought everyone to Peak Planet to mine. Mo Lian, haha, Rotten Peach Blossom is very proactive. Crown Prince, why did you come in? It's nothing. Mo Lian cast a glance into the distance before lowering his eyes after testing it out. We can't enter the main planet. Yes, we can't enter the main planet. Little Water Child said in a childish voice. Before Master went in, she told us that she would need a certain amount of time inside. Yes, the fastest would be 3 days. Mo Lian furrowed his brows and pondered. He then left Paradise Planet. When the 3 puppies saw him suddenly appear, they were filled with righteous indignation and pounced on him, biting his robe and barking in protest. Don't make a fuss. Mo Lian pressed the space between his brows as he carried those 3 little ones to the table and patted their heads. There was something fishy about this. Yun Piaomiao wouldn't send them a message for no reason. Hui Feng. A dark figure suddenly appeared at the window and bared his white teeth at the crown prince. Master, did you forget again? Hui Feng was personally ordered by you to be sent to Huiping village to open a mine. Otherwise, she would have returned to the capital with third young Master Fu. Poor Hui Feng. He didn't know how he'd offended his master again. Xiao Yi secretly shed a tear of sympathy for him from the bottom of his heart, but that was it. His Highness, it seemed like Hui Feng had offended him. Humph, he ordered him to lead a group of brats from the Purple Forest Guard to open that holy meridian in Huiping village. But in order to ensure their safety, he had already ordered Venerable Immortal Jinshang, Zhao Xing, and Liang Yi to assist them. With Venerable Immortal Jinshang, a peak Venerable Immortal, protecting Hui Feng and the others, there shouldn't be any major problems. Mo Lian thought for a moment before saying to Xiao Yi, have the people from the Night Pavilion go to the Imperial Academy's Yun Piaomiao to scout for information. I don't know what matter requires the Crown Princess to personally handle. Yes. Xiao Ye's expression was solemn as he responded and immediately left to handle the matter. Mo Lian frowned slightly, and a trace of irritation inexplicably rose in her heart. Chapter 3961. Couldn't Yun Piaomiao say a few more words? What a troublemaker. Mo Lian frowned. His hand was touched by the three little things, and he came back to his senses. He casually took some meat and tore it to feed them. He muttered, I wonder if Jojo is doing well. Your Highness. Tong appeared at the door. Mo Lian nodded. Is there any news? A hint of hesitation appeared on Tong's face. If you have something to say, just say it. Yes. Tong nodded and then said, the second day after Prince Qin returned to Tsang province, he went to the Imperial Mausoleum on Lonely Mountain and hasn't left the mountain since. Imperial Mausoleum. Mo Lian was shocked. Who is it? Prince Chen's mother passed away. Mo Lian was startled. Why so suddenly? Yes. This subordinate found out that Prince Chen received the news of his mother's burial the second day after he returned, and he rushed to Lonely Mountain on the same day. What else did you find out? Mo Lian's expression changed slightly. This brat, don't let anything happen to him, Qiao Qiao is worried. Our men are moving very carefully in the Phoenix Monarch City. Emperor Tsang has spies all over the world, and they will be caught by him if they aren't careful. Tong lowered his head. That's all we found for now. It said that Prince Qin cried for 3 days and nights in Lonely Mountain and then fainted. Mo Lian! Exclamation point. Have our men contact him and see if there's anything we can help with. Yes. Tong didn't say anything and only lowered his eyes. In the end, the men they sent to Phoenix Emperor City were spies of the enemy kingdom. Now that His Highness the Crown Prince was willing to sacrifice these men to help Prince Qin, it was clear that they were close. The situation on Duan Yu's side definitely wouldn't be as easy as his. As soon as he returned to the capital, his father gave him everything he should, despite his arrogance. He even handed over the most secretive hidden emperor guard of the Yu court guards to him without hesitation. Other than that annoying old lady, there was basically nothing else in the harem for him to worry about. Duan Yu was different. His unreliable father would not dote on his son as much as the divine prefecture emperor did. The emperor of Tsang province had so many sons and daughters, so why must he choose Duan Yu? Moreover, there were so many women in the harem and so many disputes. Duan Yu's mother's death was definitely not simple. Do your best to help him. Give him all your connections and money. Mo Lian ordered coldly. Yes. Tong Zheng was about to leave. However, he heard his master say coldly, don't let anything happen to him. Yes. Mo Lian had been sitting in her room until nightfall when she was awakened by a soft knock on the door. Xiao Zhongbang stood at the door and said, "Shema, come out and eat." "What are you doing cooped up in the house?" Mo Lian relaxed and stood up to greet him. "Father. Jojo said that he's going to go into seclusion to concoct some kind of pill." Xiao Zhongbang scratched his head and said with a smile, "If you don't have anything to do, then don't cooped up in your room. Come out and chat with everyone." "Okay." Mo Lian nodded with a smile. "Oh right, you have to go to court early in the morning tomorrow, right? Your mother said she's going to make breakfast for you. Remember to go after eating." Although Changle Avenue wasn't far from the palace, it wasn't as close as the Eastern Palace. It would take half an hour to get there. Since the Crown Prince was staying here, he had to leave a bit earlier. "Okay," Prince Mo agreed with a smile. Xiao Zhongbang nodded with a chuckle. Chapter 3962. Inside the lush forest behind the Royal Academy's mountain, everyone silently stood in front of the ice crystal coffin, not speaking for a long time. The atmosphere appeared very oppressive. "Eldest brother, please reconsider." Yun Piaomiao lowered her gaze and quietly said, "After all, this matter concerns her master, so Jojo should have the right to know." Yun Piaomiao heaved a long sigh, and her gaze lingered on the ice crystal coffin, a trace of exhaustion showing on her face. All these years, from painstakingly gathering medicinal herbs to deliberating and discussing which experienced pill refiner to invite to help, after much consideration, she invited Medicine King Island's High Venerable, a perfected god-rank great pill refiner, He Wen. In the end, all her previous efforts were wasted. The leaves rustled, and Ni Hanji walked out from behind the forest in a long blue floral dress, her lustrous black hair tied up in a bun. She was supporting a slightly aged and weary elderly man. "Why did He Wen get up?" Yun Piaomiao turned to ask. On the side, Great Master Wu Yen silently lowered his eyes, his thoughts unknown. He Wen had his disciple, Ni Hanji, help him up a few steps and looked at the purple-robed woman inside the ice crystal coffin with her eyes tightly shut, as if she was sleeping soundly. The woman's gentle features revealed a bit of charm and enchantment, and her gorgeous appearance was gorgeous. Even though her eyes were closed, it seemed like it could not steal away the myriad of light that belonged to her. If Arbor was here, he would definitely be shocked. Wasn't this the master she yearned for so dearly? Murongsun's body was unharmed, but she had lain inside this ice crystal coffin for who knew how long. Yun Piaomiao turned around and nodded at He Wen. "He Wen's body is unwell, so you should rest more." He Wen said in shame, "I wasn't able to save your esteemed friend and even wasted such an excellent medicinal herb for nothing." Yun Piaomiao interrupted him. He Wen also tried his best. Yun Piaomiao would not blame He Wen for not being able to refine the soul-returning pill. In reality, He Wen did refine it, and because he skipped levels to refine a sacred rank pill, Great Master He Wen also suffered a bit of backlash, so his complexion was still pale. Unfortunately, the soul-returning pill that He Wen had refined was barely a low-grade orange patterned pill. Its medicinal strength was not enough to wake Ah Sun up. So in fact, this soul-returning pill was only a half-waste pill with poor quality. Yun Fei let out a long sigh. Was this fate? Originally, he thought that with Sir He Wen's ability, as long as he could concoct a middle-grade blue-veined pill, he would be able to save Ah Sun. Even if the medicinal effect was slightly lacking, as long as the person could wake up and slowly recuperate for the rest of his life, it would be fine. Of course, a mid-grade blue patterned pill was definitely not comparable to a high-grade purple patterned or supreme-grade black patterned pill. But at least there was hope, right? Who would have thought that even so the chances were still so slim? Yun Fiang silently lowered his eyes and let out a long sigh in his heart. His gentle gaze landed on Murong Sun as he deeply gazed at her. The soul-returning pill failed. This meant that Ah Sun could not be saved in the end. Ah Sun's body had already been laid here for 3 days. She had to be buried the day after tomorrow at the latest. No matter what, in the end, people still had to be buried in peace. Murong Sun, this is a polysyllabic word, so some people pronounce it Chien. It's unpleasant to hear, so I must correct you all, haha. Chapter 3963. Ni Hanji glanced at the aloof Yun Fei, and anger involuntarily flashed through her eyes. She walked up to support Sir Hewen and arrogantly questioned, Headmaster Yun, you aren't blaming teacher, right? In order to refine the soul-returning pill this time, teacher spent a lot of effort and paid a huge price. There was even a spiritual energy backlash during the refining process. It's not like my master didn't refine the soul-returning pill. Ni Hanji coldly said, she can only blame herself for being unlucky and not waking up after eating the soul-returning pill. Hanji, Hewen hastily reprimanded her. The soul-returning pill was only refined into a low-grade soul-returning pill, so Hewen's guilt was indescribable. Now that he heard his disciple say this and tried her best to argue her way back to save face, he felt even more embarrassed. Hewen was a magnanimous person, so he was actually very ashamed that he couldn't win back Murong Sun. Especially since he also wasted so many precious herbs. It was very difficult for normal people to gather such a set of herbs, not to mention that it was originally used to save a person's life. Hewen sighed. He then apologetically glanced at Yun Fei and Yun Piaomiao. Apologies, Hanji is still young and doesn't know any better. I hope you don't take offense. Yun Piaomiao and Yun Fei had experienced Ni Hanji's temperament these past few days, so they didn't want to lower themselves to this girl's level. However, Yun Fei's attitude towards Hewen clearly turned colder. If Sir doesn't have other matters, please return to the guest court to recuperate first. Ni Hanji's personality truly wasn't that likable. She was 18 or 19 years old, not an 8 or 9-year-old child. She should be sensible now. Sir Hewen sighed and patted Ni Hanji's hand. Disciple, let's go back first. Ni Hanji's pretty face was cold as she supported Hewen back to the guest court. Along the way, she complained in dissatisfaction, Master, you were injured because of them. Judging from their attitude, they seem to be very dissatisfied with us. Master didn't save her. That's still not Master's responsibility. Ni Hanji angrily said, moreover, Master was injured to refine this soul-returning pill. What else do they want? The more Ni Hanji spoke, the angrier she became. Could it be that they want Master to pay with his life? Sir Hewen let out a long sigh. Hanji, I know you're worried about Master out of good intentions. It's just that this time, Master wasted so many excellent medicinal herbs to refine a low-grade orange-patterned pill. Hewen sighed. Master also feels bad in his heart. Ni Hanji silently lowered her eyes and pursed her lips as she muttered, they were the ones who asked Master to refine it. Besides, it's not like Master hasn't refined any medicinal pills. Yes, it was refined, but the quality was not good enough. Hewen glanced at his beloved disciple, patted her hand and said, it's Master who has let down Principal Yun and the others. Don't always go and insult people. Ni Hanji snorted, they don't respect Master, which means they don't put Medicine King Island in their eyes. What kind of status did Medicine King Island have? Even existences like the City of Shadows and the Fiery City would be very courteous to the people of Medicine King Island. A mere principal of the royal school actually dared to give the people of Medicine King Island a hard time. Hewen was helpless. Principal Yun's attitude towards us is extremely good. It was just that he didn't flatter them like ordinary people, but his usual etiquette was also very considerate, and he had never neglected the master and disciple duo. Chapter 3964. Even so, Ni Hanji was still dissatisfied. Her master worked so hard to save her, so why shouldn't he give them a good look? Hewen knew his beloved disciple's temper and said helplessly, "All right, we'll stay for 2 more days at most. After that woman is buried, we'll return to the island." Ni Hanji grumbled, probably muttering to herself, "Why do we have to wait for that woman to be buried?" However, since it was her master's decision, Ni Hanji didn't object and supported His Excellency. He went back to the guest court to rest. Seeing the two of them walk away, Great Master Wu Yan sighed and said, "What a pity." He didn't know if it was a pity that His Excellency Hewen had such a good temperament to take in such a frivolous disciple, or if it was a pity that the superior medicinal ingredients were used to refine pills of that quality. It was a complete waste of the energy and time previously spent. Yun Piaomiao turned to look at the silent Yun Fiang and said softly, "Eldest brother, I insist. No matter what, Jojo should know about this matter." Yun Fiang remained silent, but his silent attitude already made everything clear. 2 days later. Arbor opened her eyes in a small room in the side hall on the first floor of the longevity hall filled with divine power on the main planet. Her complexion was a bit pale, but she seemed to be in good spirits. The little stoic reached out to take out a bottle of nutrient fluid from her inner world and downed it. Chio's voice immediately rang in her ears like a demonic tune. "Master, Master, you've come out of seclusion, Master, Master." Arbor raised her brow and looked down at herself. After 3 days of seclusion, there was a layer of black oil on her body. She immediately pinched her nose in disdain. After she advanced to God Realm, she didn't have time to properly stabilize her realm. Now that she had cultivated for 3 days in the outside world for more than 30 days, her realm had clearly stabilized. She had successfully transitioned from spiritual ruin realm to divine ruin realm. As for her current cultivation, she had already reached the beginner level of divine dominator level 2. The little girl looked down at her lustrous palms. With a thought, she immediately appeared in the hot spring in her house. After a comfortable bath, he changed into a clean set of violet clothes. The little stoic's figure fluttered and flew out of the main planet's range. Her figure spun lightly, and she appeared next to the little tree ant that was still emitting demonic sounds. The sapling had just called out, "Master has come out of seclusion," and ignored Chio. Chio's life is so bitter. Suddenly, he saw a slender figure appear beside him. His beady eyes immediately lit up. Chio looked up at its little master with a dreamy expression, its voice rippling. "Master, you seem to have become prettier again." Not only had Master Silver become more beautiful, her temperament had also become much calmer. If he didn't say anything and just stood there, it would be as if his entire person had disappeared from the world. There was no sense of existence at all. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and the others rushed over when they heard the news. They sized up the little stoic and nodded repeatedly. At this time, the little guy had completely entered the divine realm, and a trace of restrained aura appeared on his body. When she moved, she could conquer the world. When she moved, she was as quiet as the floating clouds and the idle moon. Her exquisite face was expressionless, making it hard for people to look away. I refined quite a few level 15 divinity breakthrough pills, divinity congealing pills, and divinity recovery pills. I don't know if they'll be useful to you guys. Arbor casually tossed several bottles of pills over. Dao Wuji and the others gleefully caught a bottle in each hand, and their eyes instantly lit up. Sir Jojo's products were definitely extraordinary items. Chapter 3965. When Arbor exited the star domain, he immediately saw Mo Lien striding forward with a slight smile. "You've been waiting for a long time, huh?" Arbor blinked and discovered that he had been pulled into his hubby's embrace. Waiting for a long time is what I miss. Mo Lien lowered his head to look at him, a smile rippling in his phoenix eyes. My Jojo, with your current appearance, I really want to hide you forever and not let anyone see you. He pinched her soft little face, his expression full of gentleness. Arbor's eyes brightened. I'm beautiful. Mo Lien almost laughed out loud. He nodded and said, extremely beautiful. Arbor nodded in satisfaction and caressed his handsome face in passing. Only like this can I be worthy of my peerlessly handsome hubby. Mo Lien. It seemed like his wife had intentionally or unintentionally flirted with him again. What a vexing little fellow. Mo Lien was helpless. He pulled her into his embrace and lowered his head to kiss her fair forehead. Do you feel unwell? Jojo's complexion seemed to have paled a bit from refining pills above her level this time. He wondered if she was suffering from the backlash of her divine power. I'm fine. Arbor patted the back of his hand, indicating for him to set his mind at ease. I've already taken the nutrient solution. I'll be fine after recuperating for a day or two. As he spoke, he took out a jade box half the size of a palm from his pocket and placed it in Mo Lien's palm. He looked up and winked at him. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Mo Lien couldn't describe what he was feeling, but at this moment, he tightly gripped the jade box in his hand and hugged the little stoic tightly, as if wanting to fuse her into the depths of his heart. Jojo, you're so nice. He rubbed his chin lightly on her small head and cupped her small face, gazing at her affectionately. Have I ever told you that you're the most wonderful girl in the world? I'm indeed not bad. The little stoic's eyes shone. If she had a small tail right now, it would definitely wag. Mo Lien chuckled and lifted her up, kissing her without allowing her to protest. My chow chow. Jojo was full of surprises every day. The more one interacted with Jojo, the more one fell in love with him. Reporting to your highness. Stay up late's voice was heard from outside the door. The little stoic's charming face flushed red, and she stuttered as she reached out to punch him with a moderate force. Mo Lien let go of him unhappily and turned to look at the door. What's the matter? Why was this guy so tactless? Can't you see that he's being intimate with his wife? They hadn't seen each other for a few days. Even a kiss couldn't make up for the emptiness in his heart. Aoye coughed lightly. King Zhang's residence has sent someone to welcome the crown princess. Prince Mo frowned. Only now did he remember the matter of Princess Consort Zhang's birthday. However, Arbor understood his intentions and grasped his hand. Let's send the medicine to the palace first. Royal father should be anxious from waiting these past few days. Even though Mo Luxing didn't press or ask, he was definitely more anxious than anyone else on the inside. She understood this feeling of worrying about personal gains and losses. It was rare that she didn't want to diss the emperor and only wanted to send the medicine over first. Okay. Mo Lien gently glanced at his wife and grasped the jade box in his hand. When he recalled that the soul-returning pill was in his hands, there was hope for his mother's soul to return. For some reason, Mo Lien actually felt a sense of homesickness. Arbor gently looked at him and said softly, I'll go with you. Okay. Mo Lien grasped her small hand. No matter what happened, as long as Jojo was there, he would be at ease. Chapter 3966. As long as Jojo was by his side, no matter what kind of hopeless situation or hardship he faced, he would not be afraid. The two stepped out of the door, and the little crown princess said to the steward from King Zhang's estate, You go back first. After some time, His Highness and I will go to King Zhang's estate by ourselves. The steward naturally did not dare to neglect the two and nodded repeatedly. He watched with a puzzled expression as the two got on the carriage and drove towards the palace. Strange, why did the Crown Prince and Crown Princess choose to return to the palace at this time? When the steward returned to King Zheng's estate, he did not dare to hide anything and told King Zheng and Princess Consort Zheng the whole story. King Zheng Shikang frowned slightly. He was naturally somewhat dissatisfied. Previously, the husband and wife were so humble when they went to deliver the invitation. Who would have thought that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess would suddenly change their mind today? Princess Consort Zheng could tell that the king was dissatisfied. She lowered her eyes slightly and said faintly, "King, don't be angry. Didn't the steward say that His Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess will come after finishing their business? You can't delay His Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess business because of this concubine's small birthday." King Zheng said coldly, "The Crown Prince has been staying at the Crown Princess's maternal home these past few days. What business does he have that he has to wait until today to enter the palace?" In Shikang's view, the Crown Prince was clearly showing him his power. He was telling him, with his noble and unparalleled status, he would be giving him face if he wanted to come. If he did not want to come, he could not do anything to him. Shikang lowered his eyes and sneered, "What a high-spirited His Highness the Crown Prince." Princess Consort Zheng frowned slightly. "King, it's fine to say such words in front of Chinchia. Don't show such an attitude in front of others." King Zheng Shikang slapped the table with a bang and said angrily, "What, does Princess Consort also think that in front of the Crown Prince, I'm just the mud under his feet that can be trampled on?" Princess Consort Zheng sighed. Her gaze was fixed on her husband as she said, "Your Highness, don't forget this. If you don't have the Mo surname, you're nothing." "How dare you!" Shikang grabbed a teacup and smashed it on the ground. The group of servant girls and manservants waiting outside the garden all knelt down in unison. They were so frightened that they almost didn't dare to move their eyes away and breathed heavily. "What are you doing?" A rather imposing voice came from outside the door. He crossed the tall threshold with his hands behind his back. He glanced at his son and daughter-in-law with a dignified gaze. Liang Shi blindly followed behind her husband. Su Shitao, on the other hand, followed the two elders in with an expression of watching a good show. "Greetings, father and mother." Shikang was very respectful towards his parents. When he saw them, he quickly got up and bowed. Princess Consort Zheng stood up and bowed to her parents-in-law with a cold and unremarkable face. "Father, mother, sister-in-law, don't tell me you've made elder brother angry again." Su Shitao slanted his eyes and curled his lips. "As his wife, how can you be so rude to big brother?" Sister-in-law was born in an aristocratic family, but she didn't expect that she couldn't even compare to a girl from a small family. Her upbringing is really bad. Princess Consort Zheng's fingers trembled and curled up. She hated that she couldn't fly up and give this sister-in-law two heavy slaps. She talked to her about etiquette and upbringing. A shameless woman who could accept others calling her Princess Tao with a clear conscience dared to talk to her about upbringing. Chapter 3967. He stood with his hands behind his back, acting like a lord. He looked coldly at his daughter-in-law and reprimanded angrily, "What kind of daughter-in-law are you? How dare you disobey your own husband?" Princess Consort Zheng's anger was stifled in her chest, causing her to feel stifled. Princess Consort Zheng truly did not want to ridicule this father-in-law. She had truly never seen such an eccentric person. In the past, when the family was in trouble, they could throw the children away without hesitation. Now that they had found their eldest son and could seamlessly get into character, anyone who was slightly thin-skinned would not be able to do such a thing. However, He did it without any psychological burden. He was a natural-born actor. Princess Consort Jing took a deep breath. Father-in-law, this daughter-in-law cannot accept your reprimand. Which large family with knowledge and heritage would have a father-in-law directly jump out to reprimand his daughter-in-law? Princess Consort Jing expressed that she did not think highly of the parents of a small family who could raise people like Su Shitao. Su He snorted coldly and wanted to say something else, but Prince Consort Jing spoke up, "Father, we are fine. The guests are about to arrive. Father, let's go to the forecourt to greet them." As he spoke, he gave Princess Consort Jing a warning look, implying that she should behave herself. Princess Consort Jing lowered her eyes somewhat weakly. Did her husband think that life was too easy? He liked to pick fights with the crown prince and his wife for no reason. Did he think that they would not retaliate, or that they would indulge him as usual? Eldest sister-in-law. Su Shitao shrieked, "What kind of expression is that? You can't be very dissatisfied with eldest brother, right?" Su Shitao paused and looked angrily at Princess Consort Jing, who was walking past him. He chased after her and said angrily, "I am talking to you. Eldest sister-in-law, what kind of attitude is this?" Madame Liang hurriedly followed and tugged at her daughter's hand. Don't bother your eldest sister-in-law. There are many guests in the inner courtyard. Don't be impolite later. Su Shitao looked indignantly at his soft-tempered mother with dissatisfaction. Only you are used to being a good person. Because the young couple did not go to Prince Consort Jing's estate in time, Prince Consort Jing was dissatisfied with them. Prince Mo and Arbor naturally did not know. Even if they knew, they wouldn't take it to heart. To them, nothing was more important than saving their mother. When Arbor and Mo Lien hurried into the palace, the great emperor seemed to have realized something. When the head eunuch came to report, Mo Luxing came out to greet them, his expression slightly excited as he looked at his son and daughter-in-law. Until Mo Lien nodded at him affirmatively. Mo Luxing let out a sigh of relief, and his eyes couldn't help but become slightly moist. He had waited for so many years. He had thought about it for so many years. When this day finally came, a trace of fear rose in his heart. Arbor entered the underground ice palace for the first time. The entire ice palace was built under Mo Luxing's sleeping quarters. As far as the eye could see, it was a world of glaciers. In front of his eyes was a hazy pure white color. Mo Luxing led the two of them straight to the ice coffin. The three of them stared silently at the woman in the ice coffin, who was wearing a red dress and smiling with her eyes closed. A woman who could give birth to a child as handsome as Mo Lien was naturally a woman with unparalleled beauty. Even though he was mentally prepared, the moment Sir Jojo saw his mother-in-law for the first time, he still felt that this woman was one of a kind in the world. Mo Luxing sent the pill into his flawless mouth. "See you tomorrow." Chapter 3968. The soul-returning pill didn't need to be swallowed, it melted in the mouth. On Bai Wuxia's body, there seemed to be a faint trace of soft light. Mo Luxing stood in front of the ice coffin, holding his breath and waiting, his gaze glued to his wife, not daring to let go at all. Arbor tilted her head to look at her husband, squeezed his hand, and said in a low voice, "Don't worry." After this soul-returning pill was refined, she knew in her heart that Mo Lien's mother could be saved. This was a black-veined supreme-grade soul-returning pill, but the strange thing was, to refine such a heaven-defying pill, there was actually not a trace of lightning floating over to strike her in broad daylight. Could it be the heavenly Tao didn't want to bother with her anymore? Mo Lien turned her head to look at her, lightly nodding her head, a faint smile flitting across her lips. And at this time, Mo Luxing suddenly cried out in alarm, grabbing his son's hand. "Little glutinous dumpling, quickly look. Listen, your mother, is there a breathing sound?" Mo Lian's hand hurt from her father's grip, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Yes. Mo Liuxing's eyes quickly lit up, his gaze landing on his wife, nervously grabbing his son's hand tightly. Bai Wuxia was quietly lying in the ice coffin. From the faint breathing at the beginning, it slowly became continuous. That voice, when it landed in Mo Liuxing's ears, was like the sound of nature twining around. Mo Liuxing's eyes immediately lit up with joy, pulling his son forward and saying, Wuxia, Wuxia, can you hear my voice? Wuxia, Wuxia. God knows how many days and nights, he had also been like this, constantly calling for her. But his Wuxia, from beginning to end, never gave a trace of response. Right now, he seemed to have seen hope, saw the dawn rising. Mo Liuxing couldn't help but tremble, throwing away his son's hand, he caressed his wife's somewhat cold wrist. Mo Lian at the side rolled her eyes at her father. This was a typical person who forgot about his son once he had a wife in his eyes. Men, hee hee. The little stoic turned to look at her husband's expression. She blinked and walked up to hold his hand. After taking the pill, mother should wake up in at most 7 to 8 minutes. She hasn't opened her eyes yet. She probably slept, pretended, for too long, didn't dare to open her eyes, so she's not in a good mood. The father and son hurriedly turned to look at her, revealing a somewhat similar puzzled face at the same time. Unimpeded chi. Was there such a saying? Yes. The little stoic spouted nonsense in deadly earnest. Royal father will pass on a breath to mother. Mother will be able to open her eyes after her breathing calms down. Transferring chi. Mo Liuxing's eyes lit up. He knew how to do this, and he was quite adept at it. However, Mo Liuxing glanced at the 2 candles at the side and narrowed his eyes. Don't these 2 brats know how to hide first? The 2 of them looked at him calmly. Mo Liuxing had no other choice but to pretend that the 2 of them didn't exist. He stepped forward to give his wife a kiss. However, he had only bent down for a few seconds, and his breath had yet to come close. The Empress's eyes suddenly opened. The little stoic blinked and met Mo Lian's eyes. Mo Liuxing stood there dumbfounded, unable to react for a while. The 2 of them stared at each other like this for a while before Mo Liuxing belatedly grabbed the Empress's wrist and said excitedly, Wuxia. Chapter 3969. Bai Wuxia's gaze was somewhat dazed as she stared deeply at her husband. Her pair of phoenix eyes were overflowing with light. This deep sleep had lasted for 17 years. When she woke up now, the 2 of them felt as if they had met after a lifetime. Bai Wuxia raised his hand. His gaze moved slightly, and he touched his face that was full of warmth. In fact, all these years, she could always vaguely hear his voice. Every once in a while, he would whisper in her ear for a long time. It was such a man, her husband, the love of her life. For 17 years, he had never given up on saving her. Just now, when she woke up and was happy to find that she seemed to be able to move. For some reason, because she was so excited, she felt a sense of homesickness and didn't dare to open her eyes for a moment. Now, looking at that familiar face, looking at the face that she had been thinking about for a long time, the face that was engraved in her heart, Bai Wuxia smiled in relief and reached out to hug Mo Liuxing. Wuxia, Wuxia. Mo Liuxing kept calling her name and hugged her tightly. It was as if at this moment, there was no one else in their line of sight except for each other. Bai Wuxia took a deep breath and looked up. She saw a young man who looked somewhat similar to her husband and whose eyes were very similar to her own. Her heart trembled slightly, and she suddenly raised her hand in the direction of Mo Lian. Mo Lian quickly stepped forward, and her hand was firmly grabbed by her somewhat cold hand. Bai Wuxia turned to look at her husband with joy. Luxing, this is our family's little glutinous rice bowl. Mo Luxing nodded. Bai Wuxia reached out to hug her son, tears streaming down her face. Little glutinous rice ball had grown so big. She had missed her son's 17 years of growth. Thinking of this, Bai Wuxia's heart was filled with bitterness. She raised her hand and touched her son's hair. Bai Wuxia's eyes were filled with love. Little glutinous rice ball, do you blame mother? Mother hasn't been able to take good care of you all these years and has made you suffer a lot. It was the nature of mother and son. Even if it was the first time they met in 17 years, Mo Lian did not feel any unfamiliarity with his mother in front of him. In fact, his memories seemed to have brought him back to 17 years ago. He recalled the scene when his mother, dressed in white, carried him to the half-moon cliff to enjoy the scenery. At that time, she was exactly the same as she was now. She held his little paw and smiled as she raised her hand to pat his head. These two figures inexplicably overlapped, causing Mo Lian's eyes to moisten slightly. Mother. The Crown Prince's voice was choked with emotion as he called out softly. Celestial Empress tears instantly fell like rain. She raised her hand and caressed her son's head. Little glutinous dumpling, mother has let you down. For the rest of our lives, mother will take good care of you and make it up to you. Mo Lian immediately regained her senses and raised her head. Mother, I've married a wife. I've already given the rest of my life to my wife. The Emperor and Empress, Bai Wuxia chuckled and turned to look at Arbor, who was standing at the side. He waved at her and looked at her with joy. Little glutinous dumpling is marrying a wife. That's a perfect pair. Tang Yuan's wife. Sir Jojo took a few steps forward with a dumbfounded expression, and Celestial Empress gently held his small hand. Bai Wuxia looked at her daughter-in-law with smiling eyes. She felt that she was very compatible with her at first glance, and her fondness for her was beyond words. The little girl was too exquisite. Bai Wuxia believed that her appearance was incomparably magnificent, but this little stoic-faced girl in front of her actually surpassed her by half. Chapter 3970. Tang Yuan's wife. Come over and let mother take a look. You're really born well. Arbor, Mo Lian, Mo Luxing couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth and laugh out loud. See, he also had a wife. In the future, he would also have a wife to help him. This pair of little brats had been arrogant in front of him for a long time. It was still unknown who would win in the future. Mother, my wife's name is Jojo. Mo Lian frowned unhappily. Jojo. Bai Wuxia smiled lightly and held Arbor's little hand. Jojo. Bai Wuxia sighed and said regretfully, Mother missed little Tang Yuan's 17 years of growth and missed your extremely important wedding. Mother can't make up for these things anymore. But Mother can promise you that I won't miss anything for you in the future. Bai Wuxia looked at the pair of children in front of her with curved eyes and said softly, okay? Prince Mo reached out and held his wife's hand. Both of them nodded. A series of hurried footsteps came from the entrance of the ice palace. Old Master Bai rushed in excitedly with his people. At a glance, he saw his daughter sitting up in the ice coffin. His pair of old eyes immediately turned red. Father. Bai Wuxia was supported by Mo Luxing and slowly stepped out of the ice coffin. Old Master Bai rushed forward with red eyes and hugged his daughter into his arms. The feelings that he had suppressed for a long time were released in an instant. Mo Lian glanced at them and held his wife's little hand. The young couple quietly left the room. As soon as they walked out of Mo Luxing's bedroom, the two of them looked up at the bright light outside the sky at the same time. The sun was scorching today. In the blue sky, there were no clouds in sight. It was as if it was announcing something. Arbor turned to look at Mo Lien and saw a smile on his lips. His footsteps were light, and it was obvious that he was in a good mood. That's right, what could be more delightful than having a whole family together? The corners of Jojo's mouth curled up as he gently poked his palm with his finger. Soon, the whole Dragon Flame City was in an uproar. Celestial Empress consumed the pill refined by the Crown Princess and was completely awake. The great Emperor was overjoyed and personally wrote a letter, announcing to the world that he would be pardoned. At this time, Arbor and Mo Lien's carriage had already arrived at the gate of King Zhang's residence. King Zhang and Consort Jing personally came out to welcome them with a smile. There was no sign on Prince Zhang's face that he had quarreled with Princess Xing because of the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. Zheng Wang Mo Lien cupped his fists and bowed towards Mo Lien. Your Highness the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess have graced my humble abode with your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Prince Mo was in a good mood today. He smiled faintly at King Zhang and nodded. Brother King Zhang, sister-in-law King Zhang, there's no need to be so polite. You may rise. Arbor's face was calm as he said faintly, today is Princess Zhang's birthday. I hope Princess Xing won't take offense to this small gift. With that, Arbor raised his hand, and Kai Xiu presented a palm-sized brocade box with both hands. She said in a clear voice, one beautifying pill from Jinhua Workshop to congratulate Princess Xing on her birthday. I wish Princess Consort a long life and a happy life. Many people at the door sucked in a breath of cold air and whispered in each other's ears. They muttered softly, feeling that the Crown Princess was very generous. One had to know that the beautifying pill from Jinhua Workshop had already been sold at a sky-high price of 5 million each. Chapter 3971. Just like that, the 3 beautifying pills every month were all sought after by the noblewomen of Dragonflame City. Moreover, it was said that the beautifying pill's reputation had already spread. If its reputation spread throughout the 3 states in the future, the price would probably be more than 5 million. After all, the Precious Painting Workshop had a limited supply of beautifying pills every month, and they would have to wait for another month to sell out. In order to get the beautifying pill as soon as possible, many noblewomen and daughters of aristocratic families did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to buy one. Princess Xing looked flattered and quickly ordered her personal maidservant to take the small brocade box that Saishio handed over. After curtsying towards Xiao Mu, Princess Consort Jing said with a smile, "Many thanks to the Crown Prince Consort." Princess Consort Zhang's appearance was clearly very mediocre among the many noble ladies. Her forehead was narrow and slightly sunken, her nose was sharp and narrow, and her mouth was very wide. But today, under the contrast of her bright red dress, her entire body was radiant, and it made her originally mediocre appearance a little brighter. The corners of Mo Shikong's mouth finally curled into an extremely faint smile. The Crown Princess offered such a generous gift. Regardless of whether she was doing it for others to see, at least Prince Zhang's residence had gained face today. Which man did not want face? If the Crown Prince and Crown Princess did not come today. If the Crown Prince and Crown Princess did not come today, there would definitely be rumors that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess did not care about him, Prince Zhang. Recently, the entire Prince Zhang's residence was not very peaceful. If such rumors were to spread, it would be too troublesome. Fortunately, the little Crown Princess was tactful. Mo Shikong nodded slightly in satisfaction and turned to the Crown Prince with a smile. "Crown Prince, please enter the residence." Prince Mo nodded slightly. He was still thinking about the machine-operated bird and the royal school, so he did not plan to stay in Prince Zhang's residence for long. But if he did not enter the residence, it would be too embarrassing for Prince Zhang. So he planned to enter Prince Zheng's residence with Jojo for a few drinks and then find an excuse to leave. Mo Shikong led the way with a smile and led the crown prince up the stairs. Along the way, all the guests bowed in greeting. Your Highness the Crown Prince. Crown Princess. Crown Prince Mo had just stepped up 2 steps while holding his wifey's hand when he heard a soft sobbing sound coming from behind them. It was accompanied by an extremely bitter cry that sounded like the weeping of a resentful woman. Your Highness. Mo Shikong's face changed slightly. Everyone turned their heads and looked curiously at the weeping and delicate woman. This woman looked delicate, but her belly was slightly bulging. It was obvious that she had been pregnant for several months. Princess Zheng's face turned cold at once. She naturally recognized this delicate woman and had even secretly sent people to investigate her. King Zheng had been close to the Lin family recently. In Princess Consort Zheng's eyes, his eagerness to rope in the Lin family was too unwise. This woman was the daughter of a concubine of the Lin clan, Lin Wan, a shameless little wench. She actually dared to take advantage of the day when she was celebrating her birthday with a basin full of guests to come to the Prince Zheng's residence with her belly protruding and demanding an explanation. She was truly a lowly child raised by a slut. Princess Zheng's eyes turned cold instantly. She stood loftily on the wide steps and pointed at the woman. Come, take this woman who is blocking the road and making a ruckus away. Flog her to death. The delicate woman looked up abruptly, her eyes filled with disbelief. When she met Princess Zheng's cold eyes, she could not help but shrink her neck. The night continued. Chapter 3972. Your Highness, Your Highness. Lin Wan panicked. She didn't know what to do when she saw several servants coming forward to pull her. She hurriedly reached out to cover her stomach and cried repeatedly. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Mo Shikong. Xiao Mu remained expressionless as her husband pulled her to the side, creating a wide path for the King of Zheng and his family to express themselves to their heart's content. Stop! Prince Zheng, Mo Shikong, angrily rebuked. He walked down the steps and forcefully pushed away the servants who were pulling the delicate flower. He lifted his foot and kicked one of them out. Lin Wan wept and wiped her tears. She threw herself into Prince Zheng's arms, looking miserable as if she was about to be trampled to death. She sobbed, Your Highness, Your Highness. Princess Zheng was so angry that she trembled all over. In order to welcome His Highness the Crown Prince, the Crown Princess, all the guests were standing in front of the door. This good show was about to start. She was the main character of today's birthday banquet and Prince Zheng's first wife. Now, her husband was hugging a concubine's daughter of the Lin family in front of so many guests and comforting her gently. How could she, the dignified Princess Zheng, put her face? Shi Yongyan was so angry that she fell backwards. She had already noticed that many madams and young misses around her were covering their mouths and looking like they were watching a good show. They were secretly laughing at her. Mo Shikong, you actually treat me like this and don't give me face. Princess Zheng didn't care about her face at this moment. She flicked her sleeves and walked towards the little white flower. Mo Shikong, you've done me right. Shi Yongyan's eyes were filled with endless anger. Mo Shikong was also somewhat regretful and angry. Of course, he knew what day it was today. He also didn't have much face to make such a fuss in front of so many masters and madams. He blamed Lin Wan for being insensible in his heart, but he was also angry that his wife didn't know how to handle things. Lin Wan was young and impulsive. Couldn't she be more tolerant? Which first wife would argue with a mistress at the front door? She really didn't know how to handle things. If she had asked someone to bring in first and deal with this matter later, she would not have ended up in such a situation. Enough. Thinking of this, Mo Shikong glanced at Princess Consort Jing with dissatisfaction. Can't you see that the guests are waiting at the door? Mo Shikong asked coldly, why don't you let them in? As for her body is not in good condition. Let her rest in the backyard of the prince's mansion. A trace of anger flashed through Princess Zhang's eyes. She glanced at Lin Wanner, who was slightly complacent, and said coldly, Mo Shikong, if this woman had stepped into the backyard of the mansion today, do you think I would have ordered someone to kill her? Among the crowd of onlookers, the madams and young misses were still fine. They didn't mind watching a good show. The young geniuses of the various large aristocratic families all became embarrassed one after another. In their opinion, it was not a problem for a man to be dissolute and flirt outside. However, if the affairs of his mistress were to spread to the birthday banquet of the first wife, it would be too embarrassing. At this time, it was not right to leave, but it was also not right to stay. A group of people stood at the door and looked at each other in dismay. Princess Zhang's unwillingness to give in completely made Prince Xing, Mo Shikong, unable to get out of the embarrassing situation. In addition, the little white flower Lin Wan beside him was crying non-stop. Chapter 3973. The anger in Mo Shikong's heart suddenly rose. He took the crying Lin Wan into his arms and comforted her softly. Then, he turned to glare at Princess Xing and said, you don't know the rules. Which legal wife would disregard her manners and argue with a concubine outside the door like this? What are you all doing? Su He, who had heard the news, walked over angrily. Behind him was Madame Liang, who walked over submissively, and Su Shitao, who was arrogant and domineering. Seeing this scene, Su Shitao couldn't help but laugh in schadenfreude. Eldest sister-in-law, it's not that I, as your younger sister, want to criticize you, but a Wang Fei like you who constantly contradicts my eldest brother and makes him angry is really rare in the world. Princess Xing sneered. Since all of you don't care about your face, my face doesn't seem to be that important. Shi Yongyan. Mo Shikong, Prince Xing, said coldly and sternly, staring at her with a warning gaze. Mo Shikong, ask yourself honestly. All these years, I've helped you take care of everything in Prince Zhang's mansion. Have I done anything wrong to you? Do you have to humiliate me like this? On my birthday, you let this woman humiliate me while she's pregnant with a bastard's child. Mo Shikong was speechless. He turned to glare at the sobbing Lin Wan. He lowered his voice and said, go back first. Didn't I tell you last time that this matter can't be rushed? Wait for the storm to die down, how can I not be rushed? Lin Wan grabbed Mo Shikong's hand and cried while wiping her tears. She said softly, Your Highness, even if I'm not in a hurry, our child can't wait. Wan looks at this belly. It's getting bigger day by day. Little White Flower sobbed while wiping her tears. Your Highness, this is your first son. How can you let him suffer like this? Your Highness, you know my situation in the Lin family. My legal mother and sister Miao have always disliked me. If I stay in the Lin family, I don't know if I can keep this child alive. Speaking of the sad part, Lin Wanner almost choked with sobs. I came to find Wang Yi to discuss matters because I had no other choice. I didn't know that today was Wang Fei's birthday. Mo Shikong looked at her sobbing. She looked so weak that she could faint at any time. His heart ached as he hugged her and patted her back. Sister-in-law, Su Shitao said sarcastically, how can you, as the wife, be so petty? Big brother is just taking in a concubine. Is there a need for you to block the entrance and cause such a ruckus? Younger sister-in-law, you are an unmarried girl. I advise you to be careful with your words. Princess Consort Jing coldly faced Imo Shikong's family of troublesome people. However, his expression remained fearless. You can even reach your hands into your elder brother's and sister-in-law's rooms. Do you not want to get married anymore? Princess Consort Jing sneered. Su Shitao was so angry that he stomped his feet. Just as he was about to curse, his mother, Liang Shi, tugged at his hand and he resentfully shut his mouth. Sir Jojo frowned and tugged at the crown prince's fingers. Mo Lian felt the little fellow's soft fingers rubbing against his fingertips. He smiled and lowered his head to look at her. What's wrong? The atmosphere is foul. Let's go. Okay. Mo Lian naturally wouldn't object. Following the principle that whatever his wife said was right, he nodded and took her little hand to walk towards the carriage. Chapter 3974. Everyone silently looked at each other before looking at the young couple's back in astonishment. His Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess left, just like that. Su Shitao was rebuffed by Princess Consort Jing, so when she saw Arbor and Mo Lian leave without even looking back, her gaze immediately landed on them. Earlier, she was in a hurry to find fault with her sister-in-law, so she didn't pay attention to these two people at all. Now that she saw them, she immediately became even angrier. Wasn't this the woman who attacked her in the despondent pavilion? Second brother Su Shihua even wanted to seek justice for her, but in the end, he was beaten to death and carried back by this woman in the Royal Academy. That's right, eldest brother even warned her again and again not to provoke this damn woman in the future. What else did he say? He said that her status was noble and her cultivation was unfathomable. If she went against her, she would only be asking for trouble. However, this was intolerable, all right. It was truly the case that when enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Su Shitao's hatred for the little stoic skyrocketed with this one glance. However, before she could step forward, she saw her eldest brother quickly walk over to stop them. Crown Prince, Crown Princess, what are you doing? Since Brother Prince Sheng is busy with family matters, we and the Crown Princess won't disturb you any longer. Mo Lian glanced coldly at Prince Sheng, the disdain in her eyes evident. My wife dislikes your family for being messy. She even feels noisy when she takes a step inside. Prince Sheng's face flushed a bit. He also knew that today's incident had indeed turned the entire prince's estate into the laughingstock of Dragonflame City. The little white flower beside him, Lin Wan, sneaked a peek at the crown prince. Her eyes wavered, and then her eyeballs turned slightly. Suddenly, her body tilted, and she threw herself in front of Arbor, kneeling in front of her. Crown Princess. Lin Wan sobbed as she wiped her tears and said, I beg the Crown Princess to uphold justice for this concubine. The Crown Princess is the woman with the noblest status here. I hope that the Crown Princess will plead for leniency on concubine's behalf and beg Her Highness Consort Jing to stop forcing concubine, bitch, you dare. Princess Consort Jing was so angry that she fell backwards. Her breath was stuck in her chest and she almost couldn't breathe. This bitch was really bold. She actually dared to distort the truth and say that she forced her. Lin Wan looked frightened. She lowered her head and crawled a few steps on the ground until she reached the young crown princess's feet. She cried so hard that she almost couldn't breathe. This concubine is only an insignificant person. Even if this concubine enters the prince's fu, I absolutely won't threaten Jing Wangfei's position. I hope that the crown princess will put in a good word for me. Everyone looked at each other. Those who knew the true nature of the little crown princess could not help but silently light a candle for this girl with 0 IQ. It's one thing for you to kick up a fuss with King Zheng's family, but why did you have to go and kick up a fuss in front of the little crown princess? Is the little crown princess someone that you can kick up a fuss with? Saishio. As expected, the crown prince consort's cold voice instantly broke the clamor on the ground. Everyone could not help but tremble slightly in their hearts. Kai Shio took 2 steps forward, her gaze cold and severe. Her hand moved like lightning, and 2 slaps landed on the stupefied Lin Wan-er's face. Audacious bitch. What kind of lowly status do you have to actually dare to speak to the crown princess like this? You even had the crown princess plead for leniency on your behalf and arrange for you to be a concubine when you enter King Zhang's fu. Where is your face? Kai Xiu was so angry that her liver hurt. King Zhang's fu was indeed, as the crown princess said, a foul atmosphere. Chapter 3975. A lowly servant dared to make a big fuss in front of Princess Consort Zhang. How was this a prince's residence? Even an ordinary noble family wouldn't be so unruly. Crown Princess. Mo Shikong was so angry that his face turned green. Little White Flower was trembling like a withered flower in the wind. She was so frightened that she trembled all over. She looked as though she had suffered a great shock as she gazed at the young crown prince consort who was looking down at her from above. Arbor glanced coldly at Mo Shikong, then her gaze suddenly shifted to Little White Flower. She reached out her hand and sucked. The delicate little flower let out a trembling moan and was sucked in by Arbor. His neck was tightly gripped by a small, porcelain white hand. Everyone had a stupefied look on their faces. Prince Mo's eyes were smiling, and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. Isn't Princess Consort Jing generous and benevolent enough to you? Arbor's gaze was extremely cold as she looked at the delicate flower that kept trembling in her hand. If someone dares to come to this crown princess's birthday and humiliates me, infuriates me, provokes me, and challenges my patience. Arbor's lips curved into a cold, wooden smile. I will make her regret that she dared to come to this world for once. Everyone, didn't they say not to provoke the little crown princess? This blind fellow just had to go and make a fuss in front of the crown prince consort. Look, the young crown prince consort was someone who would go berserk on a whim. Little White Flower only felt that the cold hand on her neck was like a ghost's hand of death, squeezing her neck so hard that she couldn't breathe at all. If someone dares to steal my person. Arbor silently lowered her eyes, and her bone-chilling gaze fell on the trembling and almost stiff woman. I will kill her, and then I will kill the person who betrayed me. I will grind the bones of your true love into ashes. She leaned close to Little White Flower's ear and whispered with an indifferent expression, I will tell you that in this life and in the next life, even if you become ghosts, you will never see each other again. Lin Wan-er was so scared that she almost went into shock. The woman in front of her had a demon-like expression, and it made her tremble with fear. Qiao Mu looked down at her belly and creased her brows. You should rejoice that this crown prince consort isn't vassal consort Zhang. Seeing that you are innocent, I will let you go today. Don't bother me in the future. Scram. While everyone silently engraved the crown prince consort's words in their minds, they also secretly looked up at His Highness the Crown Prince. They wanted to see how His Highness would react. After all, the words that the crown princess had said earlier could be considered as treason and heresy. Then they couldn't help but want to kneel to His Highness. Not only did that His Highness not feel that the crown prince consort was wrong, he even stared at his wife with bright dog eyes, as though his wife was the stars, sun, and moon in the sky, dazzling and illuminating people. Alright, the crown princess's tsundere temper was 99%, no, 100%, caused by His Highness the Crown Prince's spoiling. Since His Highness the Crown Prince was enjoying it, there was nothing more to say. When they got on the carriage, Prince Mo immediately reached out and pulled the fuming Sir Jojo into his arms. Jojo, let's ignore that messy family in the future. His baby was so angry that he wanted to beat that idiot Mo Shikong to death. Arbor glanced at him and suddenly asked curiously, "Isn't this the way back to the palace?" "Jojo, let's go back to the academy. See you tomorrow." Chapter 3976. Startled, Arbor tilted her head and looked at Mo Lien. "What's wrong?" Lotus wouldn't have gone back to the academy if there wasn't anything important. After all, her mother had just woken up. As her son and daughter-in-law, she should have spent time with her mother first. Mo Lien rubbed her hair. "I've sent someone to inform father and mother. There were too many things to tell you. When you went to the main planet to refine pills, Yun Piaomiao sent a mechanical bird to inform you and ask you to go back. Although that Dean Yun's actions are unreliable, he's still an expert. But he wouldn't joke around with us about important things." Mo Lien gazed at his wifey. "I keep feeling that there should be something important that requires you to make a trip back." Qiao Mu's gaze was a bit dazed. What could Yun Piaomiao want from her? Is it about the final round of the heaven roll? Mo Lien shook his head. It was agreed that the final round would be postponed to the end of the month. If it was only about this, Yun Piaomiao wouldn't have sent a mechanical bird to inform you and ask you to go back. Arbor thought it made sense and nodded. "Then let's go back and see." Since she couldn't guess what it was, she would talk about it when she went back. Mo Lien reached out and brushed a strand of hair in front of her eyes to the side of her face. He poked her soft face. "Don't worry." It was impossible to say that she wasn't worried. After all, the more unknown something was, the more worrying it was. It was just that with Jojo's Lotus by her side, she wouldn't be worried, afraid, or flinch no matter what happened. Mo Lien held her hand. "Jojo, let's use the teleportation array when we get out of the city." "Okay." Arbor nodded and took out a teleportation array made of 128 jade talismans from her inner world. This set of talisman arrays had twice the number of teleportation talismans compared to the 64 teleportation talismans. The teleportation distance could now reach up to 500 miles. He could teleport about 20 times in a row. Even though there was such a long distance between Dragonflame City and Wind Thunder City, it was estimated that they would reach Wind Thunder City in half an hour by alternating between two sets of teleportation talismans. The two of them left the city and activated the talisman formation in a low-key manner, beginning the teleportation journey that was tens of thousands of miles long. On the other side, Wind Thunder City, Royal Academy's back mountain. Amidst the crisp pine forest, a gentle breeze brushed past their clothes and blew away the pine needles that covered the ground. Yun Piaomiao's eyes were filled with exhaustion. She could not help but sigh softly in her heart. It had already been 2 days since the mechanical bird was sent out to send the message, but there was still no sign of the little girl returning. Could it be that this was the fate of the heavenly Tao, and it was irreversible? The paper money scattered all over the place, floating on the trees, falling on the ground, brushing past the coffin made of ice crystals, and falling into the tomb. Yun Fei's eyelids drooped slightly. His thin white figure looked exceptionally thin. Standing behind him, Great Master Wu Yan, Wei Wei, Zhou Danjin, Instructor Hu, and the others were also silent for a long time. All these years, Dean Yun had traveled all over the world to collect herbs and find a way to save Peak Master Murong. They had all seen it and understood it silently. However, the world was so unpredictable. There were many things that one couldn't succeed even if one tried hard. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.